potential economically in terms of movements, transportation of goods, as well as services between the region. Actually, in the region, I should say, in the region.
Because
not
if you
just
look
in Kenya, but even beyond that.
You're right. And actually, in terms of, you've talked about business.
Yeah.
But according to NTSA, that road is one of the deadliest and the most dangerous roads from Nairobi heading towards the side of Western Kenya. Most of accidents do happen along that highway.
Yes.
The other day, a university bus killed certain people around Kayole in Naivasha. Exactly. When you go to Salga, when you go to around that stretch from Kinungi towards, you know, that area between Kikope and along that stretch, it's one of the most dangerous roads in the country. So much as we're talking about business, it's also going to reduce the number of road accidents and fatalities that being happened there. But hey, it's high time. It's high time. The trucks and all that happening along that road will be a new thing. We'll be giving you more updates as we plan to wrap it up. Matters to do with audio meeting today, the PG. Remember that the six-day ultimatum is completely coming to an end. Now, the CS for education, that is CS Mashogu and CS Owalo, are today at Kametho Primary School in Asembo Rarieda constituency. That was supposed to start. They had their own timetable, and then later on at Seger Primary and Secondary School in Asembo Rarieda and constituency in Siaya County. Then later on in the afternoon around 2 p.m. they'll be at Gesusu Secondary School in Nyaribari Masaba constituency in Kisii County. Then lastly, at 3 p.m. they'll be at Geteri Primary School in Kitutu Church North constituency, Kisii County. Right now, the agenda is about disbursement of infrastructure support funds to the schools. And as we speak, CS Mashogu is currently speaking. Perhaps if we can get that link to listen to what the CS is speaking about, that would be good for us. All right. Apology for that mix-up. That is, that should be Hibak, right? Back at the Safari Park, we will get back and listen to what the CS is talking about currently. But Hibak, perhaps if you can give us the sights and sounds of what we should be expecting. There is a blue background banner there for you. Today we expect a heated kind of discussion. What else should we expect? Having in mind that Kenya is posing itself to be one of the big business brothers across the county, the continent, so to speak.
Mic check, mic. And as we traverse through different stalls and different businesses, we must acknowledge that these exhibitions, of course, have authorities that are managing them and authorities that are looking over what they do. One of the more important authorities is the National Construction Authority, and construction workers, of course, have been having their own difficulties, but of course the authority says that these workers are being facilitated. If you could just tell us, what are some of the things that the National Construction Authority is doing? After you introduce yourself, you're live on KBC Channel 1.
Karibu. My name is William Maranga. I'm one of the officers working for the National Construction Authority, charged with the responsibility of communication. One of the officers in the communication department. The National Construction Authority is a state corporation charged with the regulation of the construction industry. Among the things that we do, we are register of contractors. We also check compliance in our construction sites, and we also by ensuring that all the construction sites have the requirements that range from approvals of their drawings, involvement of accredited consultants, and also one of the things we do is that we also accredit construction workers in the various protocols and categories.
Of course, one of the things that the president is very passionate about is infrastructure. If you could just tell us, what are some of the measures that the National Construction Authority is taking to ensure that this is achieved?
Now, number one, what we are doing as an organization is that we want to ensure a cleanup of the industry by flushing out those quacks who have been involved in the construction industry. People who purport to be engineers and they are not, and they are also handling very serious developments. Number one way we are doing that is that by registering a construction site, we ensure that everyone involved there is registered by their various bodies like KBK, EAK, and QSK, and also these funders are accredited by us in the various categories that's required.
And it's very important to ensure that there is compliance in this particular sector. Let's talk about workers and exploitation of the labor and labor market. What are some of the unique things about construction workers in Kenya? What are some of the things that, stand out when construction workers from Kenya are compared to other construction workers?
Number one, that is where we came up with a reason to accredit our construction workers like fundis. Today, if you are doing your construction and then we come to check compliance, quality assurance, we must check also which fundis are involved in what. Like if there is an electrician, they must be accredited by us. If they are not, then it's illegal to work in a site on various disciplines. If you are a mason, we have to have you accredited by us as government before you are involved in a work. So that means nobody is just going to work in a site without knowing who did what where.
And maybe, a lot of people have questions on, structural integrity and so on and so forth. What would you like to assure Kenyans?
Number one, it's mandatory that you have to involve all registered professionals, from engineers, architects, approved drawings, and everything that is required by government. By so doing, definitely, if there is a problem, God forbid, then we know who to go for, we know who to check, we know who did what where. So I'm very sure there is not going to be a problem if we involve the right persons at our sites.
And that is the word from the National Construction Authority. Ensure that you are always dealing with professionals in any sector that you are dealing with. We've moved from various counties, various sectors. We're in the National Construction Authority's booth at the moment, Victor. And of course, we will keep on moving and keep on giving insights as the second day of the Kenya International Investment Conference continues. But for now, back to you in studio.
All right, thank you so much. Hey, back there at the Safari Park Hotel, please just give us more details as soon as you start that particular conference. This is the second day of the Kenya International Investments Conference taking place at the Safari Park Hotel. Okay, let's cross over to Rarieda, where the CS for Digital, that is Eliud Owalo, is speaking together with the CS for Education, Ezekiel Machogo. Let's take a listen.
For the students. Yeah? And Waziri Mwalimu pia amewaongeza 20,000. So mimi nasema hivi. Sasa vile sasa tuko hapa na 120,000, 50,000 iende kwa lunch ya wanafunzi, 50,000 iende kwa walimu, 20,000 iende kwa board committee. Sawa sawa? Yeah. And make sure
is CS Eliud Owalo there speaking in Rarieda. There must be a fundraiser there at that is Kametho Primary School in Asembo, if I get it right, because they're supposed to be in two different locations, either Siger Primary and Secondary School in Asembo, Rarieda constituency of Siaya County. We'll get you more details in our subsequent bulletin. Of course, there must be something newsworthy that will come out of that.
Definitely, and even as talk about that infrastructure support funds to school, it's quite timely.
Yep.
Especially now when you look at the new funding model, then just would make the realm of sense to have that.
That reminds me when we had MPs back in school, Member of Parliament coming and say, today I'm giving 20,000 shillings.
For the school.
This goes for the school.
Basically what he was saying.
Siku tulikuwa tunakula nyama. Sio two pieces, ilikuwa like a whole. And our dining hall captain, Mike, wherever you are, we celebrate you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tulikuwa tunakula nyama ya MPs wakikuja school. That was the
kama saizi unajua hata wanakula vizuri pale sababu the CS is there.
Yeah.
But I can tell you for sure that is really quite timely. It's necessary and important, much as we need to also be looking at policies and framework to assist when it comes to learning. Where we are getting looks like could be a bit expensive. So with such kind of infrastructure and funds, then at least it does alleviate the burden of parents.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right, it's time for us to say thank you so much for being a part of the show. But a quick recap that Azimio PG to decide fate of talks replaces Sabina will be taking place later today. Raila Odinga last week gave state 6 days to accede to 3 demands. That lapses today. And now Azimio leader Raila Odinga has convened a meeting of opposition legislators to decide the fate of the bipartisan talks. Some of the interim concerns of Azimio, just a quick one, are the cessation of invasion of coalition affiliate parties, especially Jubilee Party, that is number 1. 2, preservation of IEBC presidential service, and 3, reducing the high cost of living. So they'll be having their PG in the afternoon. The opposition also demanded suspension of the IEBC selection process. Today, the opposition chief, alongside Azimio co-principals Martha Karua, Kalonzo Musyoka, and Eugene Wamalwa, will announce the way forward to supporters. Remember, the 6-day ultimatum lapses today. And finally, you talked about that, Nurdin Haji. We've had the opposition and, of course, some pressure groups opposing his...
The vetting is today?
Yes. The vetting is also today at 2 p.m. And that is... will be taking place in the afternoon. Yes?
We have to cross over to Safari Park.
CEOs of African companies present, CEOs and leadership of Kenya Private Sector Alliance and Business Chamber of Commerce present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for gracing us with your presence at this 3rd Kenya International Investment Conference 2023. But first, I would like to welcome you to Kenya, a country that has been scientifically proved to be as where humanity began. I think the president yesterday, as the chief scientist, confirmed the same. A country that is geostrategically positioned as the heart of Africa. If you look at the map of Africa, it has been positioned as the heart of Africa. A country that has been infrastructurally enabled to be the gateway to the rest of Africa. I also want to welcome you to Nairobi, the top city in Africa and the only city with a national park. And as you enjoy our wildlife in the national park, don't forget the fishing lions of Lamu, the bathing elephants of Tana River, and the baboon parliament of Narok. When we were young, we used to be told that all hard work with no play makes Jack a dull boy. And now there's a new saying that all investment without tourism, you need to tour the place, will make the investment dull. I hope you will agree with me on that. But now back to the investment arena. I'm delighted to join you today in this important segment. Our President Ruto, in the U.S. Leader African Summit, he said that Africa will shape the future. And he said it will shape not the future of the African people, but the future of the world. Africa is the next and the last frontier. It offers the largest emerging market in the global value chain. It has the youngest population in the world, and by 2050, it is projected that a quarter of the world population will be in Africa, and a third of the working age will be living in Africa. And our Kenyan message to the African companies and to the world is simple, is that Kenya is open for business. Kenya is ready for business, and we mean business. We continue to to position Kenya as a competitive investment destination, not an aid destination, not a loan destination, not a development destination. We are not looking for loans. We are not looking for aid. We are looking for investment. We are investor-centric and not investee-centric. And it is in that regard that this administration has established a specialized state department in charge of investment, in charge of private sector, and operationalized a National Investment Council, which is chaired by His Excellency President Ruto and is private sector heavy, with the main aim of removing impediments and creating incentives to private sector investments. This State Department of Private Sector, its mandate is to implement investment policy and to engage private sector to address areas of investment and business reforms and enhance competitiveness of our investment climate. I was once told that you cannot attract if you are not attractive. And this is our Kenyan attractive package. It includes a robust human capital, youthful, affordable, well-educated, highly skilled, hospitable, creative and innovative, enterprising, and above all, good-looking. Kenya is the most innovative African nation in Africa as per the World Economic Forum. And you can see the likes of M-Pesa and M-Kopa. Kenya has a good network of ports, railway, roads, airports, and supported by energy mix that is 92% green. Kenya ranks second in terms of venture capital deals. Kenya is ranked number 3 in Africa in the ease of doing business, and it was ranked by the World Bank assessment report. Kenya ranks number 1 in financial inclusion ratings. Kenya has a market access of 50 million people with a GDP of 110 billion USD, and it's a member of EAC Regional Economic Bloc, which has almost 300 million people with 300 billion GDP. It's also a member of COMESA with almost 500 million people, and we are driving the coming together of the tripartite free trade agreement between SADC, EAC, and COMESA, a market of almost 750 million people, and we are now championing the full implementation of the AfCFTA, which is a market of 1.3 billion people with a GDP of 3.4 trillion. Kenya, the standard of treatment of investor is national treatment. Foreign investors receive same treatment as domestic investors. In Kenya, you have the right as an investor to repatriate your capital and your returns with no restriction. In Kenya, the Constitution prohibits undue expropriation of your investment. In Kenya, we have several investment dispute resolution mechanisms, and Kenya participate in the International Dispute Resolutions Forum. Based on this success story, we continue to build on it. Since this administration came into power, the president has pronounced several pro-business reforms which are time-bound. With respect to tax predictability, there's a new tax policy to be in place which states that the tax measures will be in place for a minimum of 3 years. He has also pronounced the review of digital tax regime, which will be aligned to the 2-pillar solution currently being developed by the OECD inclusive framework. That will include that will guide the taxation of digital transaction. To enhance tax competitiveness for global service hubs in Kenya. He has removed VAT on exported services to improve cash flows for businesses operating in Kenya because of the tax refunds. The president has pronounced himself, and it is in the finance bill, that all verified tax refund claim to be payable will be payable within 6 months, or you will offset against your future tax liabilities. He has reduced the tax on foreign companies from 37.5 to 30%, equal, just like a normal domestic company. He has exempted tax for startup companies from paying employee benefit tax on allocated shares before realization. We are reviewing our export processing zones, our special economic zones fiscal incentive framework, to zero corporate tax, zero withholding tax, zero VAT, no excess duty, tax holiday, just to spur controls. The president has removed the domestic equity requirement of 30% for foreign ICT companies wishing to set up in Kenya. We have also upgraded our business registration system to ease registration processes to 1 day. We are also putting together a robust action plan that ensures Kenya complies with international standards of anti-money laundering and CFT counter terrorism financing by the end of this year. We continue to listen, and we continue to identify and address areas of reforms. And last but not least, we have developed over 300 bankable projects across our bottom-up economic transformation agendas and pillars, and they will be shared, and I've directed the CEO of Kenya Investment Authority to ensure each and every participant is shared, the pipeline is shared with each and every participant to this conference. With such attractive package, I'm sure you now believe that Kenya is an attractive investment destination from the south of Sahara through the north of River Limpopo to the end of Nile. But once you are attracted, we don't leave you there. We will handhold you. We will do all the bush clearing for you. We know you don't need brokers. All that will be done for free by Kenya Investment Authority. That is our facilitation strategy. There is a one-stop center at Kenya Invest, both physically and digitally, with an escalating mechanism to the State Department of Private Sector, which is chaired by yours truly. And if there's a problem, it will go all the way to the National Investment Council, which is chaired by the president himself. Our aim is to make sure we are removing all the barriers to investment and creating incentives to the same. But we don't leave you there. We still want to enable you to deploy your capital into this country. And our mantra is that you invest in us or you invest with us. If you decide to invest with us, we have a co-investment mechanism to de-risk your investment, and we put our skin in the game, 10%, 90%, and we have a specialized state-owned investment company which is dedicated to do that. We also have a robust private partnership legal and regulatory framework to facilitate public-private partnership. Lastly, in a way to enable you, we have incentivized economic zones. We have 3 models. We have export processing zones, we have special economic zones, and now we are having county aggregated industrial parks which will be incentivized. Kenyan economy like most countries, is driven by agriculture. Agriculture contributes about a quarter of our GDP. However, most of our produce are affected by the post-harvest losses, and they are exported in a raw format. To address this, the government is rolling out county aggregation and industrial parks in each of our 47 counties, not only to address post-harvest losses, but also to enhance value addition of our agricultural produce. All our 47 county aggregation and industrial parks will be linked to a warehouse receipt system and Kenyan National Multi-Commodities Exchange to ensure quality storage and provide price discovery and manage the price volatility. We invite you, therefore, to explore this investment opportunity across all our counties, from farming to export-led agro-processing, as well as in specialized agribusiness infrastructure, including cold storage units, quarantine facilities, quality control laboratories, quality certification centers, and cold chains. Similar opportunities exist for the development of environmental-related infrastructure, such as effluent treatment plants. As I come to close, government has partnered with private sector, Afrexim Bank and the rest, to develop extra processing zones and special economic zones. These zones, they provide incentives such as graduated corporate tax holidays, perpetual import duty and VAT exemptions, capital investment deduction, expedited project approvals, investor support and aftercare through one-stop center, and immigration, custom and operational support, among other incentives. As a country, we also have a special operating framework called SOFA, anchored in law, through which investors making high-value strategic investment that we're going to transform this country to negotiate additional incentives with the government. As an example, we recently concluded a $500 million investment with Moderna under this framework. Finally, we invite you to engage us, and we have an office right outside here at our exhibition center where you can access all the investment information that you need, which you can also access on our various government portals. Welcome to Kenya, welcome to Kiko. We are open and ready for business, and we mean business. Thank you very much. Asante sana.
A great speech illustrating all the incentives that are in place for us to invest here in Kenya and indeed across the Africa continent. Once again, let's give a warm round of applause to our Principal Secretary, Abubakar Hassan Abubakar. Thank you, sir. I hope we all took note of some of those very key incentives to allow us to invest in this market. I've now had a chance to look at the 2 MOUs that were signed earlier, and I just want to highlight what they're about. In terms of the tripartite MOU between the Kenya-Chinese Chamber of Commerce and the Kenya-China Cooperation and KenInvest, this is an MOU to promote investments between our 2 countries, and indeed it is actually to look in detail to allow for wholesale facilities from China to be set up here in Kenya to allow Kenyan investors to pick up products which they can retail within this country. So once again, let's thank all those parties for that wonderful MOU. And in terms of the MOU signed between Wisebridge of Korea and the Africa Economic Zone, that is an MOU to allow for the manufacturing here in Kenya for home appliances. Congratulations and well done. Thank you. Now we get to the next part of our program, which will be a panel discussion. But it's my pleasure to actually allow our very able MCs to come to stage to take us further on this program. Maybe we give a round of applause to the MCs because we never do that. For the great job that they do. Thank you.
Please clap for Brenda. Thank you for taking us through the first session for this morning. As you can see on your program, we did have two sessions that we're going to run concurrently. We are now going to join our high-level panel, which we will discuss on unlocking Africa's gateway. And discussion areas will be business environment in Kenya, infrastructure development as an enabler, policy frameworks to accelerate growth, and market access. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, please can I invite the moderator for the next session this morning, who is from KBC, Mr. O'Brien Kimani. Please put your hands together for him.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. MC and Miss Brenda Bathy, and all the speakers who have graced this podium. I must make a disclaimer first that please do not accuse me of addressing. I left the house when it was very cold, and I live in the villages, and it gets very cold down there. And so when I got to the city, I was taken aback to discover that it's quite sunny and beautiful up here in the city. So thank you very much for your understanding. The next thing that I want to say is that welcome back home. The president reminded us yesterday that you were indeed where humanity originated from. Where we are seated is about 650 kilometers away from the cradle of mankind, that is in Turkana County. It would be a mistake for you not to make a point to visit home and see where we all came from. And again, where we are seated, you're about 600 kilometers away from some of the best beaches that God ever created. And the locals in Diani will tell you that God created Diani beaches at about 9 in the morning when he was fresh and calm. And so also make a point to go and see some of the best beaches that you can ever see in this life. And so without further ado, I want to welcome on stage the people who are going to guide us in this conversation. Why or unlocking the Africa gateway. And this is Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to welcome on stage Mr. Tim Steele. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Copia Global. Mr. Tim Steele, kindly find your way to the podium. Shall we put our hands together for Mr. Steele? Thank you, sir. In the same breath, let's welcome Ms. Brenda Bathy, the President and of General Electric East Africa. Let's put our hands together for Ms. Brenda Bathy. Please take your position. Again, Mr. Kundakwashe Matereke. He's the Regional Manager for Afrexim Bank. In the same breath, let's put our hands together for Matekere. Mr. Jaswinda Bedi is the Vice Chair of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Kindly make yourself or find yourself to the podium. Again, let's welcome Mr. Jean Bertrand Azapmo. He is the Africa Union Commission Economic Development, Tourism, Trade, Industry and Mining. Let's put our hand together for Mr. Jean Azapmo. And finally, Mr. Walid Hareb Al-Falahi. He's the CEO of UAE Trade. Mr. Falahi, please make find their way to the podium, please. Oh, sorry. Yeah. All right, he's comfortable in that one, actually. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us this morning as we discuss how to unlock Africa's gateway. And this conversation will revolve around business environment in Kenya, the reforms that the government has put in place to ensure that Kenya becomes a preferred business and investment destination. The conversation will also revolve around infrastructure development as enabler, bearing in mind that the country has invested more than 1.2 trillion shillings in the last 10 years in expanding our railways, our roads, and our waterways. This conversation will also touch on market access, opportunities under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, and finally, policy frameworks to accelerate growth. And so, in the interest of time, I want to go straight to the question. And I want this question to go to Ms. Brenda Bathi. And the question is, when you look at Kenya as a gateway to the African continent, what are some of the low-hanging fruits that we can pick to make this destination more robust and to deepen investment in Kenya?
Thank you. I think if we go back to what the Principal Secretary said in his speech, there are several things that the Kenya government is definitely looking at to allow us to be more competitive and to allow us to be the place in Africa as an investment destination. Let's look at them one by one. One thing we need to do is to look at our infrastructure. Physical infrastructure, logistics infrastructure, our digital connectivity, and including energy. And I think in terms of that, for investors, we do have regular supply of energy, our digital connectivity is good, and logistics definitely improving. Yes, there's work to be done, but definitely improving, and there are plans underway. We also need to look at trade facilitation. How do we simplify and harmonize our import-export processes and procedures? And I believe that that's also underway, and a lot of work has been done on that. And as the Principal Secretary indicated to us today, they're open to listen. So where there are hitches, going to KenInvest, explaining what they are, definitely things seem to be able to be unblocked. We look at enhancing digital trade and e-commerce, which is definitely the way of the future. And it's very pleasing to note that in our next finance bill, which will be read in June, that we will now be looking to follow the OECD rules, which will be a game changer, I believe, for ourselves. Elimination of non-tariff barriers, NTBs, and I believe Jazz Betty will be best able to talk about that. It's a continuation of, you constantly have to look at this, try and resolve it, but definitely something that assists. The enablement of free movement of persons. It was very pleasing to note that yesterday, I believe the President alluded to looking at opening our borders to allow Africans to enter freely. And I think that that definitely will be a game changer. And hopefully we would see reciprocity of it within Africa. So those are a few that definitely will assist and definitely things that have been looked at. Thank you.
Very good indeed. Thank you, Brenda, for that response. I want to turn now to Jaswinda Bedi. And Brenda has really talked about you touching around the issues around investment climate in Kenya. But I want you to combine that with, when you look at Kenya and Africa at large, you are talking about a market with about 1.3 billion people and an economy with the size of about 1.3 trillion US dollars. What are some of the obstacles to Africa's integration process?
Thank you, Brian, for that question, and I think it's a very, very relevant question. Truth of the matter, yes, 1.4 billion people on the continent, but the economy, combined GDP for all 54 countries is 3.5 trillion. So just a slight correction on the numbers you used.
3.4, yeah.
So it's not a small economy, it's huge market opportunity. And when I look at the continent, and the peer said earlier on that 1 in 4 people on the continent by 2050 will be African, or on this planet will be African, and 1 in 3 will be a working age population. So you're looking at a serious opportunity here. And unfortunately, the trade within the continent is the lowest in the world. If I give you some statistics, the intra-Europe trade, Europeans trading with Europe, is 65%. The USMCA, the US, Canada, Mexico trade within that region is 50%. When you look at the Asia, intra-Asia trade, it's at 45%. And when you look at intra-Africa trade at this point in time, it's about 15%. So it just tells you we are just not, Africans don't trade with Africans. And so we have a problem. And when you look at the why analysis, why does this not happen? And when you look at our colonial past, you'll actually see that Africa was built by our history through extractive infrastructure. That means you grow coffee, extract, take it out to Mombasa, or tea, or minerals, or mines, or gold. Whatever product that we've got as our value, we actually just extract and send it in raw form. There's very little value addition. That to me is a serious opportunity. But I mean, if you see what price our farmer gets in 1 cup of coffee, you'll actually realize he's only getting 3 cents in that cup of coffee in Starbucks, and it's being sold at $3. So it just tells you the value disparity that we've got in every value chain, be it agriculture, be it mining, and so what we need to do is, of course, change that narrative. We need to change that paradigm. We need to start changing our infrastructure connect from extractive infrastructure. We need to deliberately go for insertive infrastructure when we can trade with each other. There's a lot of talk about the Cape to Cairo road, from the Lamu to Douala infrastructure that we need to build. But Africa is just not connected to trade within Africa. So a serious logistics issue that Brenda talked about. But we have no choice. And we have to develop the continent, and we have to create jobs on the continent. The youngest population in the world, average age being 19, maiden age, and a serious opportunity is our human capital. And to keep that human capital employed, I think the connectivity on the continent is super important. Thank you.
And I like to pick it up there, and thank you for the corrections. With an economic size of about 3.4 trillion US dollars, and when you compare these with, for example, the United States of America, with an economy almost 23 trillion US dollars and a population of about 325 million people, you definitely realize that Africa is quite a small market. But I want to hear this from Mr. Falahi from the United Arab Emirates Trade Center. So why choose Africa?
My brother, listen, you know, I don't want to talk like a politician. I'll talk as a friend, as a partner to Africa. I started my first business in Ghana. I lost money. I wanted to develop a railroad between Ghana and Nigeria. I lost a lot of money. But if you go back and you think where you can really make it big, it's not UAE, even though I'm from UAE. It's not Europe. It's not US. The potential of making it big is actually in Africa. Whether in mining, whether in agriculture. I started 100 megawatt solar. What do I know about solar? Nothing. But the capability, and I'll be very frank, we are extremely high network people. We go to Europe, they don't take you seriously. You come to Africa, from a president of a country to executive, they're welcoming you. So you guys have to clap yourself that this is a welcoming country.
Please, welcome. Clap for yourself. This man is complimenting us.
And it's a welcoming continent. Second part, I'll be very frank with you guys. When we started in Dubai, do you guys think we have what you have? We have nothing. We have a desert. We have no money. People think, oh, UAE has money. I think Mr. Abu Bakr was there. The change didn't happen because of money. Didn't happen because I come to Kenya, I go to Masai Mara, it's a different world. The weather, if I can put it in a container, I'll be one of the richest people in the world. Human resources. You have everything. You just put it, what you need is just be serious and put it together. You know? But if I go to what is the opportunities in this country? If you look at tourism export, and I'm not waving, you know, this is green gold, avocado. Are we kidding? This type of avocado that exists here. You have human resources export. You have everything. What you need is just a proper packaging. When it comes to investment, guys, how would you want to attract investment and you don't even have an investment map? We are expecting a foreign investor to come to this country and start digging for information. So I literally sat, I'm very happy I sat with Mrs. June. And you guys are coming to that. Guys, don't expect the investor to know everything. Prepare the tools for him to come and invest. Once you give him the tools, the ROI in this country and Africa is 10 times better than any other countries.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed for the compliments from Mr. Falahi. And he just talked about something very interesting and something that should be the core of investment in Africa, creating an investment map. And we must, first of all, tap ourselves on the back as a country, because the PS talked about the government has developed about 300 projects, bankable projects. These are projects designed and waiting for investment. And so it's a sign that Kenya is a few steps ahead in this game. And turning on to Mr. Kundakwashe from the African Exim Bank. You know, when you look at the global average returns on equity is about 13%. But in Africa, it attracts about 20%. And so when you look at the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, what are some of the opportunities that have been brought about by these arrangements?
Thank you very much. I would like to make a comment before I got into answering your question. A lot of comparisons have been made between Africa and China from a population perspective, and also the contrast of what China is doing with its trade with the rest of the world and in comparison to what Africa is doing. China is a country and Africa is a continent. And the best opportunity we are having to becoming something closer to a country is the AFCFTA. Because then we are harmonizing our trade and we are looking at investments as Africans, investing in an African country more at par with any other party and trading with the rest of the world on and trading amongst ourselves on more equal terms. So hopefully we'll become a market, and the closest we are to becoming a market will start making a difference and an impact in what Africa is trading with the rest of the world. So the Continental Free Trade area is giving us an opportunity to do that. And I'll make mention of a few factors that we see in terms of what Afreximbank is doing specifically in Kenya in order to boost its capacity to attract international investments to be able to trade with the rest of the African continent. As Afreximbank, we have recognized that Kenya has the potential to become the gateway, and we did this through earmarking quite a significant part of our balance sheet in order to support Kenya from its industrialization strategy. Already, we are looking at participating in the industrial parks in Kenya to bring in investors outside Kenya to invest in Kenya's industrial parks. Just yesterday, we toured Athi River with a view to getting a party from West Africa to invest in the Athi River industrial parks. That would improve their returns, that would improve their access into the rest of the East African continent. We are also working very closely with the private sector in order to provide them project finance, project preparation facilities to support trade and investments on the African continent. And this we're doing recognizing the fact that Kenya has that opportunity to become the hub from which most of these African operators can operate in. The AFCFTA presents this opportunity that Africans have always needed, because I think that when you look at the largest groups in Egypt, in Nigeria, in South Africa, they are keen to expand in the East African markets because they are not growing in their own markets. Look at what Dangote is doing in Nigeria. That's all good, but we are proud that we have taken Dangote to Tanzania, and we've also supported them in their investments, say, in Ethiopia. We are looking at some Egyptian groups that we have taken to other African countries as a way of attracting Africa direct investments on the African continent. So the returns are not good when you are overly invested in your own local market. It starts making sense when you invest outside your own markets, and that's the beauty of the AFCFTA, because it's not just trade, but it's also investments. Taking equity in companies, incorporating in countries that you are not currently present, so that you take advantage of the local presence that it gives you to the local markets. And Afreximbank is very keen to work with African investors who want to invest in other African countries. Thank you very much.
Very good, and thank you very much for highlighting that case of Aliko Dangote, who is emerging as one of the biggest investors in Africa, and we have seen what he has managed to do in Nigeria in the petroleum as well as fertilizer industry. And we hope that these cases can be replicated, around Africa, whereby Africa, we take charge of investment decisions in Africa, and we become the pioneer investors in Africa. But I want now to turn to Mr. Steele. You run one of the most successful e-commerce platforms in this country and in Kenya. And in the last 10 years, you have invested close to $100 million in the African market to deepen e-commerce market. What are some of the policy interventions do you believe African countries can put in place to make it easy for more investors to come to Africa?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I was reflecting earlier on the effectiveness and likely success of CFTA. And I think we all talk about the fundamentals of the market and the statistics of the billions of dollars, the billion people and so on. But that market needs to be serviceable. And I think at the moment, all investment pretty much is focused on the higher end of the market. And I think there's a risk there with the execution of CFTA as well. It was hard to pull together 54 countries. It will be harder to keep together, because there's a risk that countries, businesses will want to defend their existing market. So I think from an investment perspective, it's really important that governments focus on opening up the real market, which is the mass market, which today is not really serviceable. Our colleague from the UAE mentioned all the fundamentals of Dubai, but what Dubai didn't have, or the UAE didn't have, was people. We have millions of people who currently are not serviceable. And I think the more that governments can do to stimulate and support business that's trying to serve that base of the pyramid, the better. And that includes, as Brenda mentioned, digitization. It includes logistics. It includes tax that doesn't penalize digital businesses. I think it includes stimulation of production in rural areas. All those things, I think, will support the making of a market that will enlarge the market and then reduce the likelihood of defense strategies as opposed to cooperative strategies. And I think e-commerce absolutely is one way of doing that. And I think partnerships between government and private sector going hand in hand to facilitate that will absolutely stimulate the inflow of funds into the continent.
Mm-hmm. And you're highlighting the fact that more policies needs to be put in place to open up the mass market. And we are in the same room with the group CEO of Equibank Holdings. This is Dr. James Mwangi, and he will tell you that Equibank has grown from a local bank to now a banking conglomerate with a presence in about 6 countries and still expanding. And that shows you that as Africans are ready for African grown brands. And when you look at the future of the African market, and I want this Mr. Azampo to respond to, because you are with the AU Commission for Economic Development and Tourism. What are some of the challenges that we need to address when it comes to integrating as Africans and creating an African brand?
Well, thank you so very much, moderator, for that question. Let me at the outset thank the government of Kenya for the hospitality and also for this very innovative platform that is provided to discuss issues pertaining to not just Kenya investment, but also overall Africa investment and economic development. I think there are a number of issues that will need to be put in place, as we strive to create an African brand. And my colleagues here, my co-panelists have also highlighted some of them. One of the first thing is to recognize our own potential. We need to recognize that potential. And I think whether it's the president yesterday, the cabinet secretary, the keynote speakers this morning, you've articulated it very well, what is Kenya putting up there. So I believe at the continental level, we also need to do that. Because nobody is going to tell our own story. Nobody is going to, make ourselves known to the rest of the world. We all know the narrative when it comes to Africa in the Western media. So that is the very first thing. The second thing is, and related to the first one, it is to project a bit of positivism when it comes to, Africa, because often what spread out is, all these negative images that we have, and undermining the positive things that are happening on the continent. So we also need to identify those, to map those, and be able to put them out there, because those would be the elements of that brand. Now, one of the fundamental issues, and this is the third point, is when we look at Africa, of course, we have 55 member states, not 54, and each African country is trying to position itself. But the reality is, if we go individually, there is very little we can actually achieve. Mm-hmm. So we need to start looking at Africa as, a one brand, rather than, a combination or a conglomeration of 55 brands. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the main challenges we have. Mm-hmm. At the African Union, we are working with the tourism industry to implement the tourism strategy that was adopted in 2019. We are also signing, today actually, we're signing an MOU with the African Tourism Board. One of the objectives is obviously to come up with that African brand. But I think what will be needed beyond the brand will be to implement some of the key policies that are actually needed for the continent to harness its full potential. Mm-hmm. Because we have been talking about the potential, whether it's the human resource, the natural resources, and everything you can think of. But unless we put those other complementary policies in place, the conversation on the free movement of persons, unless we put all of those in place, we can have a brand, but it will just be, something on the paper. Mm-hmm. And this is what we are very much concerned about at the African Union. It's one thing we would like to, to move to the center stage, so that member states focus more and more on those policies that are needed for the brand to eventually pick up when it is finalized. Mm-hmm. Let me stop here for now.
Yeah, and you're talking about, Africa packaging itself is one product, and marketing itself as a product instead of 54 countries. And I want to hear this from Mr. Matereke. Is it possible for Africa to market itself as one product, but still at the same time we enhance competition amongst ourselves? Is it possible, really?
I think it is possible. When you go to countries like the US, you find each state has its own administration, it has its own chamber, it has its own government, so to speak, and there is industry representation for a state. I like what you told me, maybe you've forgotten, a few years ago, that when you are from Tanzania, what we're looking for in future is to say, I come from Tanzania district, but you are all African. So you can vote in Tanzania and may not vote in Kenya for certain elections, but you are African. So it's very possible, and I think there's a conversation that the president was trying to advance, that when we speak as a bloc, instead of 55 African countries being put together in a room by one head of state, and then you are told, so what can I do for you? What will you do for me? Is being made to be separated. The FCFTA, in our view, and all the other governance institutions within the AU are giving us the opportunity as Africans to approach the other markets outside Africa as one bloc. There will be differences. And the example that I gave about USA doesn't mean that there are not differences among states. there will be differences, but there will be more areas of convergence, which should give you the strength as you go about doing your business. So there is more that unites African countries than what divides them. And I actually think that when you look at all these protocols that have to be agreed for people to trade more evenly under the AfCFTA, there is more that unites African countries. Because look, the tea that we trade, if there is challenges with the biggest markets like Egypt and Pakistan, it doesn't matter whether this tea has been grown in Kenya or in Uganda or in Rwanda. Tea can be rejected for the same reasons. Avocados can be rejected for the same reasons. So we need to develop our institutions here where we test our goods such that when it gets that stamp from the African market, it can go anywhere in the world, knowing that those goods have been tested on the African market. So there is a lot of institutions that we need to build for our trade so that African goods can speak with one voice when they go to destinations outside the African market. So it is very possible. It doesn't come easily. It comes with a lot of planning, with a lot of hard work, and I think this is the reason why there is the minds around us that we need to think through what we need to do. And as Afreximbank, we are trying to build these and institutionalize these institutions to make them practical to operate so that we can have one common voice when we trade in our goods. And we are lending the support that we are to the AfCFTA for that purpose.
And the beauty is that, the conversations around, creating a seamless and a borderless Africa, is picking up pace. And yesterday we heard it from President Dr. William Ruto, where he was talking about or hinting at Kenya removing visa restrictions on African country, on people from African countries. And I want to hear this from Ms. Brenda Bathy. In this hall, since yesterday, we've been talking about what the African governments are doing and what the African governments are not doing. What is the role of the private sector in deepening intra-Africa trade?
Thank you. Thank you. And in case I don't get an opportunity, I just want to also thank Ken Invest and the Ministry of Trade for this wonderful forum that allows the private sector to also have a voice. So what can we do to help infrastructure development or the convergence of all African states in Africa? One, private sector can be utilized more to finance and augment public finances, to increase our participation in different projects, using pension funds. I think there's still a lot of bandwidth for African states to look at how best to use pension funds in growing the economy and different bonds. We also can look at what sort of specialized skills private sector can bring and what they can invest in, different approaches to procurement, and transparency of procurement, especially in large infrastructure projects, which help to enhance effectiveness and competitiveness. I think that private sector could be utilized more. We can also be seen as a partner to help to develop reforms to make infrastructure investments more attractive to private sector participation. And I think the Kenya government has definitely started to go a long way in that and have dialogue with private sector on the same. And then the whole PPP infrastructure model. I think there's still, again, more bandwidth for this to be looked at to help to accelerate development. I think private sector needs to be seen as a partner in development and needs to be included and given a seat at the table. And that's one of the reasons I want to thank Ken Invest and Ministry of Trade for allowing us to participate in this conference.
Jaswinda, I want you to pick up from where Ms. Brenda has left. And yesterday, we were given a typical example of how landlocked Africa is in terms of infrastructure. And Kenya exported its first consignment of tea leaves to Ghana. This consignment was supposed to take about 2 weeks. It ended up taking about 3 months. I actually need to find out whether, the tea was still consumable when it got to Ghana. And when you look at interconnectivity in Africa, Africa is the least interconnected continent in the world. And so what do we need to do to enhance connectivity in Africa, be it roads, railways, ports, and so on?
Thank you, Brian. I think just to add on to what Brenda was saying, I like what President Museveni says. He says the problem in Africa is we are all pygmies trying to compete who is a taller pygmy. With that premise, we need to start thinking as private sector, how can we complement each other as opposed to compete with each other? Unfortunately, even if you look at the regional economic blocks in East Africa, COMESA, the private sector is actually a barrier to free trade, because they start lobbying the individual countries that this shouldn't happen and that shouldn't happen. And if you look at East Africa as an example, we see the stay of application that goes to Arusha every year is getting bigger and bigger, and every country is trying to protect the little industry that they have. So we should first move that paradigm of competition to cooperation and complementation. As soon as we have that, we will unlock a lot of this infrastructure. So we have a serious issue of infrastructure. I mentioned earlier on our business over the last 200 years, our links of the past, colonial past, has been extractive industry, extractive infrastructure. How do we move it from extractive to insertive or inclusive infrastructure, whereby Africa can trade with itself? There are big plans out there from I know, for more than 50 years, we've been talking about the Cape to Cairo road. It hasn't been completed. Parts of it has been, but I would say out of that infrastructure, Cape to Cairo, maybe 30% is still incomplete. We built the port of Lamu, and we wanted to connect that Lapset corridor to Douala in Cameroon. Maybe Kenya did the port of Lamu, and we did some few kilometers into the Kenyan soil, but was that continued in the other African countries? So the big master plan of infrastructure is out there. The only problem is implementation of that master plan. So it's not that we don't have a master plan of infrastructure within ECOWAS, within IGAD, into all these regional economic communities. I mean, the whole idea was that we take all these building blocks and turn it into one continental free trade agreement. So we've jumped to that continental free trade agreement, but we need to start dismantling the regional economic blocks so that we can then realize the dream under the AFCTA. I totally agree with my friend here that there's serious opportunity, there are a lot of possibilities that is uniting us as opposed to dividing us, but we end up focusing on the divisions as opposed to on the collusions together. What can we do together?
And you have highlighted the three keys, what I would call the 3 C's that can unlock, intra-Africa connectivity. And you're talking about cooperation, competition, as well as complement. And Falahi is from the United Arab Emirates, and we have seen in the last 40 years, the UAE has managed to develop one of the most sophisticated trade ports in the world. We're talking about the Dubai port. They have also managed to develop one of the most busiest airports in the world, the Dubai International Airport. And so, from where you see it, Mr. Falahi, what do you believe African countries need to do to unlock their full potential when it comes to infrastructure development as well as intra-Africa connectivity?
Actually, I need to make a point. A place where you invest, a place where you spend at least 1 week of your time is your country. So I consider myself an African, because most of my investment is in Africa. I have a family here, and I spend at least 1 week a month. I think, the biggest challenge that we see is what Dubai is a different creature, very difficult. Every country I go, we want to be like Dubai. You cannot be like Dubai. Just be like Kenya, be like Tanzania. I think the potential to create a beautiful, powerful Kenya is very powerful. It's just tweaking. I mean, we talk about investment. I don't know, you were mentioning. A lot of people go and spend money right and left to bring companies from outside the country. I was deputy director of Jebel Ali Free Zone, which is one of the largest free zones probably in the world. 70% of our investment came from inside the country. No investors, unless no investor will come and put millions of dollars from day one. But my advice, sorry John, I'm focusing on you and your team. Focus on the local companies. A local company that is during COVID, after COVID, we should support Kenyan company, Tanzanian company. Why? Because if they collapse, it will take you years to bring a company similar to that. So my number one advice, and that's what the government of Dubai did. We created an aftercare model and we went company by company. What do you need? How can we help you? Sorry, I don't know if things are dropping. Leave it, it's okay. Basically, we went company by company. A lot of times, the help is not a lot. That's one. Second thing, where I feel, why always, I was in one country in Africa, and this country needs from meat, rice, this and that. So when I said to the minister, I said, yes, we are in 2023, but our parents, we used to trade. You give me meat, I give you coffee. The old days proved to us that sometimes it's not about dollars, it's about trading. So an intra-Africa trading done properly on commodities, will get things rolling. Today we're looking, and we're helping a country today to source meat, to source coffee, to source tea, to source vegetables, everything. Why? Because of the dollar. Inflation of dollar have affected these countries. So an intra-Africa plan of commodity exchange, I think what you said, Africa, when you start, have two focuses. Africa focus and a country focus. That's how, there are so many areas to touch, but I see the potential in Africa, guys. Believe in Africa. Wallahi, this is a country where you are welcome. This is a country or a continent where you are welcome, and the opportunity to do something great is high. And we are committed. The mandate from our leadership in UAE, support Africa to the max. And last thing, with regard to ports and free zones, I think we are open hand, the leadership, to exchange, to work with, whether it's Africa, Kenya or other. And it's our, it's our continent, we have ancestor bloods together. So we are 100% supporting Africa and Kenya in particular.
Mm-hmm. Very well. Thank you very much for reminding us that we need to create strong African countries within the African continent, because as a matter of fact, Africa can never be Dubai, and Dubai can never be Africa. But we can create strong African brands that can compete with the best in the world. Gentlemen and lady, time is not really on our side, but I want to hear from Mr. Steele before we call it a wrap. From where you sit and from where you stand, what are some of the policy changes that we need to retweak here in Africa to ensure that not only do we attract, strong FDIs, but also we retain FDIs in Africa?
I think it's easy as an I think it's easy as an investor to always call upon governments to make changes. But I think it's equally incumbent upon the investors and private companies to make changes in the way that they work. Somebody once said to me, if you have a problem, look in increasing concentric circles for your own desk. Don't look somebody else to solve it for you. And I think that we should be seeking, as private companies, partnerships that bring full solutions to the consumer. So as Copier, we can provide e-commerce, we provide logistics, we can't provide payment rails, we can't provide insurance, we can't provide pharmaceuticals, all of which the consumer needs. So we should be looking for those partnerships to make that work. And I think also there's been a historical nervousness amongst investors or even multinational companies generally in dealing with governments. I think if we're going to succeed as developing each of the individual countries in Africa and the continent, we need to overcome that nervousness and embrace partnership and make it work and find ways of making it work, because only together are we going to unlock the full potential of the mass market.
Very good. Create partnerships and unlock the African continent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for being part of this conversation this morning. And of course, we look forward for more engagements going forward. Otherwise, your time is highly appreciated. Let's put our hands over close. Thank you very much indeed. May you please take your positions. And to you, thank you very much indeed for being here and for listening to this conversation. And time now for us to take and invite Dr. James Mwangi. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Equity Group. An example of how African brands can grow from scratch to conquer the African market. The Equity Group, has grown from a Kenyan banking unit into an African banking conglomerate operating in 6 countries with plans to expand to the rest of Africa. It has been feted as one of the most innovative banks in Africa and having one of the best growth models in Africa. And so this moment we are privileged to listen, or to have the opportunity to listen to Dr. James Mwangi, who has steered the bank to the height where it is and to where it is going. Dr. James Mwangi, please come and talk to these people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian, peers and colleagues, my colleague, industry captains. It's really an honor for me to be asked to share my views and to push the case forward that as the African community, we may want to have a starting point and push the case of Kenya as the gateway. The African Continental Free Trade Area, we have been told, is made up of 55 states. 55 states at very different levels of evolution in suitability to host the entry point of the international community. While logically it is about intra-Africa trade to a great extent, the imperative is that we are part of a global trade circuit. And as a result, we must bear in mind the need to interlink with global capital, global investment, and global trade. And so the question is, where are we best positioned to act as the gateway to Africa Continental Free Trade Area? And that context of being 55 countries gives 55 different options. But today let me try and push the case of Kenya as that gateway that would really give us the impetus to really, during our lifetime, reach 40-60% of intra-Africa trade. As Brian, our moderator, said, I'm the Chief Executive of Equity Group, currently Brian in 7 countries, and being a systemic financial institution in those countries, being in the top 3 financial institutions in each of the 6 countries out of 7. So it's really an African investment. And we have really been hubbed in Kenya. And so I'll pick a little of why Kenya has propelled us to be a systemic financial institution within the African context. I think the first and foremost case that we can really put forward is Kenya's political commitment. Those who know, or when the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement was voted by the African Union, Kenya and Ghana competed who would ratify first. Rumor has it that Kenya ratified first. I have not verified. So you can see the commitment, the passion that Kenya has towards trade. It's demonstrated. Kenya has demonstrated its commitment to this. The second aspect is ratification of the African Open Skies Agreement. Again, Kenya holds on the table with a pen. You cannot have an African continental free trade area without logistics. And given the massiveness of the continent and the level of physical infrastructure, air transport would be the most versatile and most agile form of carrying out logistics. And again, Kenya was very fast to do. And yesterday, we all received an apology, those who traveled into Kenya, for being asked to have a visa. Kenya is committed to remove the visa requirements for the business community. Again, you can see this is what you talk of facilitation. And that level of facilitation requires political will, political commitment. And those who, and peers talked about it a lot, policy reforms. If I could be asked one country which is leading in the continent in enacting reforms to enable the African continental free trade area, I would say that country is Kenya. So essentially, from the onset, you require political commitment for this to happen, and really glad. And I think for us in the financial industry, know it well, that the country that has led the East African community in reforming the financial system to create a common market from a financial perspective is Kenya. And all the countries have benchmarked themselves with Kenya. So I see huge opportunity there. Now, let me also say, Kenya naturally has a head start. We in Kenya sometimes don't appreciate how globalized this country is. The basis of Kenya's globalization has a lot to do with Nairobi being the seat of the only United Nations headquarters in emerging markets. UNEP, Habitat, having their headquarters here, having about 200 permanent representatives, have infused the globalness that you feel in Switzerland, in Geneva, or the ones you feel in New York. And that is something we have never really appreciated. And most has given business an opportunity to adapt very quickly, such that particularly the hospitality industry, it has done very, very well. Whatever kind of food you want in Nairobi, you walk to the restaurant that offers that. That variety, that diversity is what will be required for the gateway for Africa. That city, that country that has that diversity, that accommodation. And it's not also lost to me that ratio diversity has been very strong. If you look at, and feel Carlo free to correct me if I'm wrong, if you look at our business community composition, it is almost 30, 30, 40. 30 Asian, 30 European or Western, and 40 African. That's what Kenya is. It's a rainbow when it comes to business. And I think we also really appraise the value of a society that is open to give everybody a chance and where everybody is comfortable to trade in. So that diversity has helped to diversify. I think essentially, I don't think, and I need to be corrected here, Caro, there is a country that is as diversified as Kenya when it comes to the business diversification on the African continent. Whether you talk about tea, it will be among the number 1 to 3. You talk about pyrethrum, it will be number 1. You talk about coffee, it will be ranked. You talk about tourism, it will be ranked. You talk about anything. Financial services, telecommunication services, Kenya will be ranked among the top in Africa. That is how business is. Business is diversified. We don't need to have a country as a gateway that is only strong in one area. We need a country that gives all businesses an opportunity because it's a diverse. We also do very well in manufacturing. I think we do best in logistics. That is what Kenya is, and hence the appropriateness of Kenya being that gateway to Africa for our African continental free trade area. Let's look at what are the opportunities. It is okay to look inward and say there is a $2.4 trillion business opportunity. But we must remember, Africa by 2050 will be 25% of the world population. Africa is 20% of the world landmass. Africa is 65% of the world's arable land. So we can't think inwardly because we are a big market of 1.3. We need to integrate ourselves fully with the global trade because we need to export. And so consequently, what is the best gateway for global capital, for global flows of capital? Because to unlock the African continental free trade area, we need massive investment and we need massive markets for export. And Kenya ticks the bill very, very well when you look at positioning. That position has been advantaged a little bit by the global opportunity. When you look at the global opportunity, where African continental free trade area can do best is in agriculture. It's a low hanging fruit. 65% of the arable land is in Africa. So you have a competitive advantage over everybody. 25% of the population will be in Africa. You have the consumer market for agricultural produce. So if you look at that perspective, then, and if it is agriculture, that 65% of the land we have talked about, it's either between South Sudan, Uganda, DRC, Tanzania, Zambia, and partially Mozambique. And the question is, where would be the hubbing of agricultural manufacturing be between South Sudan, DRC, Zambia, and Mozambique? The logical conclusion is the country with the most advanced logistics and infrastructure that interconnect all those countries. And that happens to be Kenya. Just draw the map for yourself. If Africa is to take advantage of the global opportunity of supporting global food security, then Kenya is very well positioned to do that. The diversification, as we said, allows global capital to flow to the specific areas of interest. The second opportunity is the broken global supply chains. Every region has learned the bitter lesson that it can't rely on foreign markets for everything. There are issues that need to be domesticated. And the first one is health. We had money, but during COVID, you could not fly to India if you were sick. You could not fly to Dubai. You could not. We need to think, and I liked the sentiments that were expressed by the previous panel. Let's make Kenya the Dubai you want. And essentially what we are saying is that for those critical sectors, we need local, regional, and continental supply chains. The best place for them is a very diversified country in terms of opportunities. I think, let me add, that it's not just about agriculture. We have learned the lesson from agriculture. We have learned the lesson from health as COVID. The next lesson would come hardy if Malaysia and Indonesia were ever not to be in a position to supply edible oils to the world. 90% of all the edible oils come from 2 countries. Just imagine if they were in Ukraine-Russia situation. All of us would be eating boiled food. Yet, in 1960, the largest edible oil producer was DRC within the East African community. So these things can be really revitalized to allow the globe to diversify, and Kenya seems to be very well positioned to do that. Let me then go broadly to looking at what the panel talked a lot about, the strength of Kenya in terms of
we hear it, it's Kenya's call. From the cities to the fields of gold, we taste it, we feel it, it's Kenya's call.
Kenya has interconnected with tarmac to Ethiopia, to South Sudan, to Uganda, and it has even done better with Tanzania, Lunga.
From the cities to the fields of gold, we taste it, we
You can see how interconnected Kenya is with the landlocked neighbors, and that infrastructure puts Kenya into a very good position. But I think it is the semi-physical infrastructure of ICT, internet particularly, the issue of telecommunication, the issue of electricity, that Kenya occupy a pole position. 93% of Kenya's energy is renewable energy. So truly, when we manufacture, when we process in Kenya, we're in compliance and we are in support of the global agenda. But let's look at the ease of the business environment. If it was mentioned, allow me to repeat, the ease of doing business. The last time it was done, Kenya was number 56. I am glad globally. And number what in Africa? Number 3 in Africa. And when you look at who was ahead of Africa, can they be Africa's gateway? I don't want to say yes or no, because I have operation in 7 countries. So, but the answer is obvious. The environment is that. I think the other area we need to look is skills and competencies. And maybe we can't brag that Kenya has all the skills, capabilities, and competencies required. But the immigration policy of Kenya allows the skills that we are in deficit with to fly in and get work permits without questions. An organization can never be better than its leaders. We must make the country that is gateway open to global skills and competencies so that our companies are globally competitive. Equity is highly globally competitive. It is ranked the 4th strongest financial brand on earth. But if you look at its leadership team, it's a global leadership team. Equity is ranked the bank with the highest return on equity and return on assets on the African continent. It simply reflects the skills. Kenya is very flexible in allowing or have the right policies for immigration to allow labor. Let's look at finance, because finance is a big issue. Business, really, the bread for business is access to finance. That's really what bread is to the body, it's what finance is to business. I understand reliably that the World Bank or the Bretton Woods 3rd largest office is in Nairobi. Fortunately, immediate neighbor of Equity group. So essentially that's something really, you can see the global finance, for the Bretton Woods to invest that much, the 3rd largest offices on earth after Washington, it tells you. European investment has made its headquarters in Nairobi and many other. So finance is not, Nairobi has 38 private equity and venture funds that has picked Nairobi as their offices for Africa. So again, finance is very well addressed and finance is really critical. But I think I want to repeat what Pierre said, Nairobi as a hub of innovations. Some people call it the Silicon Savannah. And I believe there is nothing wrong with calling Nairobi and Kenya as such. M-Pesa, Safaricom is the global leader in that space of innovation. Equity Group is the global leader in financial inclusion, global leader in agency banking, global leader in mobile and digital banking. It demonstrates what this country is made up of. And we can talk of corporate, we can talk our creative finance of the circle movement and many others. So again, innovation, we seem to know. But that innovation culture has been grounded now by the global technology companies setting their research centers in Kenya. If you look at Microsoft, you look at Google, their research center are in Nairobi for Africa. If you look at MasterCard, Visa, their research centers in Africa are in Nairobi. That really creates the support for a very innovative. But I think something that I didn't hear talked about is the depth of our financial sector by being anchored on a very strong capital market. The Kenyan capital market is not only deep, but have breadth, and I think it's ranked the 4th most vibrant capital market in the African continent. Nairobi Stock Exchange is a globally visible stock exchange. Again, that is really what finance is all about. But let's talk access about markets, and that was very well done and talked about. Kenya is a member of the 7 East African Community countries. It's a common market. So before you achieve 1.3 billion, you have 300 million consumers in the pocket. Before we clear all the barriers, that is the starting point. So, and that gives a sizable market that we then can wait to scale as the logistics are done. But also Kenya is a member of COMESA. You don't need to go beyond that, then scale the 300 to 700 million market, common market. 2 members of the East African community, Tanzania and DRC, are members of SADC. SADC and East African community are members of COMESA. So again, how well integrated. 17% of East African community trade is intra-Africa trade. It's the most integrated and most advanced common market on the African continent. So it's the best place to start. And when you look at that, while trade is almost well split between DRC, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, Kenya leads in the pack. So essentially, it becomes a logical area to start a trade. And Kenya has agreements with the US, AGOA, with the European Union, with Britain. So you access those global markets. And Kenya is a member of the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth recently established its office in Nairobi to facilitate trade. So essentially, we could see where we are. But let me close by talking a little bit about policy. I think for those who have not ventured into Kenya, I invite you to look at the investment code, the Kenya Investment Code. I want to invite you to look at the trade framework that has created the special economic zones, whether it's the Athi River, whether it's the Dogo Kudu, and even as a business, you can have a special economic zone created for you, like it has been done for Tatu City. So essentially, we have a very robust policy framework. The good thing is our framework is anchored on law, and the strength of Kenya comes from the legal framework that was offered by the new constitutional framework, the Kenya 2010 Constitution. So essentially, it is a policy embedded in law, and I would say the environment is predictable. With the latest enactment in the tax law, we can now say we have a predictable tax law framework. And for business, if the legal framework is strong enough, the next question, what is about the tax regime? Is it predictable? And lastly, this region is not only integrated, it's very organized. The UN agencies in the region, 6 of them, the Bretton Woods institutions, 16 development banks, have decided to come together and create the African Recovery and Resilience Plan for East and Central African region. Equity Group has funded that plan with $6 billion. Development banks have put $24 billion. So we have a head start. And we are not only having a head start from being organized, Kenya is at the center of the fastest growing region in the world, the East and Central Africa region. And we all know what the growth over the last 30 years, sustained growth, with Asia, Southeast Asia being the fastest growing region, what it did to the entire region. I trust we have started what one would call the transformation of African continent, but it seems to have peaked on East Africa, which has become the fastest growing region on earth, endowed with arable land. So agriculture will be a long landway, production and processing and exporting. And the region also seems to have been endowed with 40% of the strategic green minerals. The world is not going to solve the climate environment challenge without this region. This region is very well positioned to be the entry point, or better put, the gateway to Africa as regards the African continental free trade area and the future of the world. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. James Mwangi, for those remarks. I'd like to now invite you to please grab a cup of coffee or tea, but to please immediately bring it back here, as we do want to start the next two sessions, which will both be held here back to back. So that will be, and the Principal Secretary for Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs, Madam Betsy Jaggi, will be joining us. And after that, the parallel session for Tourism, Sports, Arts and Culture, which will be the Cabinet Secretary for Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Culture, Honorable Penina Malonza, will join us. So please, ladies and gentlemen, if you do not mind, please do stand up from your seats. The coffee and tea stations are right behind you. We will serve. Please feel free to bring those back. I would like us to commence the next sessions in the next 15 minutes. Thank you.
Shina letu viwandani na mashambani, fwesi fwesi husia imberi.
Kwa utalii tutajirika, mbuga zetu zaimarika, kwa ujasiri takumbatia. Wimbo wetu, fahari yetu, Kenya yetu tasonga mbele. Uadilifu ni ngao yetu.
Well, that's just the first session of today, being day 2 of the Kenya International Investment Conference. And the conversation this morning was all around unlocking Africa's gateway. Well, PS investment, that is Abubakar Hassan Abubakar, this morning also giving his key address, noted that the government of Kenya has laid down enough measures as tax incentives, especially targeting to increase investments and, foreign direct investments. But now we're going to be joined by Chief Executive Officer, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Carol, to just give us a brief of today's session. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
What is your take on what the PS said in regard to, the incentives that are being offered investors, especially foreign investors, given that you are you're an umbrella of local investors? What's your take?
Well, we are an umbrella of both, local and foreign. We are happy to have the incentives, but I think we are also working with the ministries and with the government to make sure that the environment, even for the local investors, is conducive. So looking at the areas that really affect the local investors, and when we solve some of those local investment issues, it also helps the foreign investments. I think every country does give foreign investment some incentives to attract the investors, because we are competing for investors as a world in different countries. But the local investment climate is also what we focus a lot on to make sure that it's conducive for everyone.
Access to markets is one of the issues also that has been addressed yesterday and today. As an umbrella body, do you think that this particular conference is meeting that particular objective of, linkages between local to the African market and global, definitely?
The markets are mostly affected by transport, logistics, that's the real big thing, and prices. And so that's really what we are looking at. We are hoping the ministers have heard us, and they're going to look at that to ensure that tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers are resolved. I mentioned about the adjustment fund, because as you open up markets, some industries get affected, some countries get affected. So you need that adjustment fund that ensures there's no loss, especially in government revenues, but also private sector, as companies try to adjust to the new kid in the block and the new rules and all that. So that will really help in stabilizing, so that we don't have mass layoffs or people moving and in one jurisdiction and another and people losing jobs. So that's really that would be important. But for markets, basically we address our transport, we address our infrastructure, we address our logistics, people will trade. People will go.
As private sector, the Africa Continental Trade Area Agreement is said to be a game changer. Take us through.
It's true, because when you look at how we trade, we trade with far countries, we trade with Asia, we trade with Europe, we trade with the Americas, but the largest population is right around our corner. The resources are right here. We talked about every 4 people by 2030, one will be an African. And that's a market by itself. That's a resource for employment, in terms of jobs, as we are looking for people to employ and all that. So really, this cannot come as a better time. And if Africa cannot trade itself, it will never grow as much as we trade with other continents.
Before I let you go, let's address the issue of pricing, products and services from Africa, and how that is likely to affect, intra-African trade that we're really working hard at getting.
Yeah. So if we address the challenges of cross-border trade, we address our infrastructure, we address our logistics, we address our travel, we address that will really, really change the pricing. So Africa is a big continent, but at the same time, if we just address those basic needs of making trade possible, the goods and services will be much cheaper. Because why should Ghana buy its flowers that come from Kenya from Netherlands? They first go to Netherlands to the auction, and then they go to Ghana. Why don't we? And we have a daily flight to Ghana as Kenya, so our flowers should go direct. So it's our tea and other foods, and the same thing from Ghana, from Nigeria, from North Africa, from South Africa. That should be much easier, so that I'm not buying South African products that have first gone to Europe, then they come to Kenya.
Very well then. Thank you very much. We have been speaking to the CEO of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance that is Carol Karaoke, just taking us through what the first session this morning was all about, and also giving their thoughts and views in regard to what we can do to optimize, the growth of the private sector, given that we're already expecting a lot of leapfrogging with the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We are waiting for the next session. The next session is going to be about sustainable blue economy, where we're expecting a keynote address from the Cabinet Secretary, Blue Economy. That is Salim Vuria, as well as also matters of tourism. We can see the Cabinet Secretary there. I don't know if she can give us but we'll get her later. She's also going to be having a session here on how we can onboard tourism, sports and culture, and also use these particular platforms, niche sectors there, to boost intra-African trade. Yesterday, statistics were mentioned during this particular conference, indicating that intra-African trade is quite low at around 17%, and in comparison to Asia, that trades within itself at 40%. Europe, they're having the highest trade among its own states at 70%. Then Africa has a lot to do there. Yesterday it was about infrastructure and how infrastructure challenges are affecting the pricing of products and services across Africa, with statistics putting that the price changes in these particular products are affected on a scale of 30 to 40%. If then this is corrected, Africa will be able to trade within itself, looking at a market size of around 1.3 billion actually in totality. That's a market that Africa needs to tap into, a conversation that has been led by none other than President William Ruto, and today emphasized by PS Investment, that is Abubakar Hassan Abubakar, who also went out to mention some of the inroads and incentives that have been offered by the Kenyan government to attract foreign investment, including tax incentives and having special economic zones, as well as the aggregation points, where focus is on ensuring that we do value addition in the agriculture value chain. We will be handing you over to the Master of Ceremony for the next panel, where focus is going to be on sustainable blue economy at a time when the Kenyan government is also working on, optimizing the maritime and shipping. And the question is, what impact will a shipping registry have on maritime? Maritime matters do not just mean waters. We're also talking about policy. And if Africa is connected through the waters, then indeed we will have made inroads to ensuring that trade across the African continent is leapfrogged to get to where we need to get. I take you back to Broadcasting House, as also link you up to the Master of Ceremony for the next panel there. Sustainable blue economy, as well as tourism, sports and culture. Over to you.
Of gold, we taste it, we feel it, it's Kenya's call.
My name is Chris Gaspari. I'm the Managing Director for Fresh Crop Limited. I originally came to this country through another company in water and sanitation, but I've seen that during my time here in Kenya how good of a work environment it is, that I decided I wanted to invest in Kenya. I saw that there was an opportunity during some of my time doing some subsistence farming up in the Nakuru area, that there was a huge opportunity in the potato seed production. So I decided that through our partnership with Ken Invest, that I would invest heavily into the certified seed production. And through that investment, I was able to really scale my business. I started this business as a very small company where we managed somewhere around 3 to 5 acres of production. And then we were able to grow through the investment that I made into the country to be able to really scale this operation. There was multiple different areas that we decided we wanted to scale into, mostly in increasing our acreage. As you can see here, this is one of our fields that's completely covered with certified seeds. And then if we move a little bit further into this direction, which is a really important aspect of really scaling our business, was getting into mechanization. So as you can see here in the background, we have some of our equipment that tills the land. We also have some of our equipment that actually does 100% mechanized farming. From the beginning, this company started as just one. That was with me as a founder. We were able to grow this company over the years to having over 40 full-time employees. And on a daily basis, we hire casual laborers from the communities around our farm to be able to support the local communities. And then direct benefits that we have through the production that we have on our farm can reach upwards of 10,000 to 20,000 farmers through access of clean certified seeds. Now, working with the Kenyan government has been very helpful for our company. There was multiple initiatives that they identified as challenges in the industry. One of those challenges was with the broker system, that they were then going to some of the smallholder farmers and being able to take the bulk product from their farm at relatively low prices. That was really been a challenge for the smallholder farmers. So the government stepped in with some new potato legislation to initiate a 50 kg bag and then the purchasing of potatoes through the kg rather than the bag. Another area that I was really happy that the government had stepped it up was through a subsidized seed program. So the national government worked through AFA to be able to really raise awareness of how important it is to use certified seed. So the government initiated a subsidized seed program that they engaged Fresh Crop Limited to be able to implement the program with partnering with AFA. So I was really happy that we were able to reach so many farmers and giving them access to certified seeds through initiatives that was initiated through the national government. We're also happy that they set up the National Potato Council, who really takes a lot of the input from us as the seed producers in the country and then taking it to the ministry to be able to then implement new legislation to be able to make it an enabling environment for us investors to be able to thrive. Through this conference and through you guys actually coming here today, I believe that this is going to open up even more doors for investment because it's so friendly to do business here in this country. Thank you very much.
From the mountains to the ocean shore, we see it, we hear it, it's Kenya's call. From the cities to the fields of gold, we taste it, we feel it, it's Kenya's call.
This meeting is very significant and indeed is a very good opportunity for the world to appreciate the potential that we have as a country and also to give this the economic space to our micro, small and medium enterprises to create necessary linkages for their products and also linkages to financing, also linkages even for capacity building. One thing that we'll want to appreciate that the manner in which our economy is designed, or rather our architecture in this country, is that majority of businesses are in MSME. And in that MSME space, majority of our MSMEs also fall at the first M. I call it magical M, that's the micro, and this is due to the high informality of the MSME sector. But the only way to give those people an opportunity to participate effectively is through such kind of exposures. They will get to appreciate that where they reside in whichever corner of this country, the kind of enterprises that are engaged in, be it in agribusiness, be it in value addition, there is a buyer somewhere. So this is a very good forum which will make people appreciate the markets and the great potential that we have in Africa. And also for Kenya, just positioning us as a hub for an emerging market. You've always seen we have been a hub for many years, but many people used just to put us as a hub for develop international communities and transit. But now we want to position ourselves as a hub for economic development. So I think it's going to be very critical because it will create those opportunities for the connectivity and participation of our MSMEs. Our theory of change as Kenya Kwanza government is building our economy by focusing from the bottom. Focusing on the bottom, what it means is that we get to appreciate that the source of wealth is at the grassroots. That's where we have people, that's where we have resources, natural resources. That's where we have, we have resilience practices. That's where we have, value chains that can help us to grow our economy. And then we have a very robust population which will fix it. Be it, they will hustle their way out. So, and the problem which we've been having in this country is that only a smaller proportion of our population have been effectively participating in the economy. So it's a problem of economic participation. So by recognizing that we need to stimulate economic growth at the bottom of the economic pyramid, I think that's it just demonstrates the commitment that we have in making sure that there is no corner of this country that is left out. There is no individual which is left out. And this is not just different with us alone. It's everywhere in the continent. And I think Africa's major resource or source of wealth is at the bottom. So it's just an approach that will enable us now putting more efforts in terms of resources, in terms of enablers, in terms of infrastructure, and also riding on some of great innovations that Africa has because of the population, the youth bulge, and then also the technology penetration, and see how we can be able to jumpstart. So for me, what we are doing here is just a question of reorganization. In our, if you look at our approach, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda will be appreciating the opportunities which are at the grassroots. For example, in this country, after petroleum, the other largest import that we have is edible oil. And if you look at edible oil, we import at 95% the raw materials. But if you look at the various oil crops and nut crops, you will appreciate that the groundnuts, the sesame, the soya beans, the sunflower, these have been our traditional food crops. The problem is we have never enterprise farming. So whenever the kind of farming, the agriculture we've been doing in this country is subsistence. The one which we say, okay, let me go to my shamba, only till that section that I know I'll harvest to push me through to the next season. We've never considered farming as an opportunity to raise incomes that can enhance our livelihood. And that's why we're going back there and see how do we enterprise farming? How do we invest in value addition? How do we create sustainable market system? And I think this is why now we're having this conversation at this level, at least this level of conference, which is a third one, and I want to hope that we can even be having twice a year, so that the whole continent it gets to appreciate, and the people, the opportunities that we have to solving our problems. First, that you're going to have this conversation shows that we have a renewed focus on in growing MSMEs, increasing their productivity, competitiveness, and therefore profitability. And MSME are private sector. and I can say there is an economy which can grow when the private sector is not thriving. So what we need to do is to appreciate, first of all, the challenges which are there, and I'm happy because our leaders across the continent have now started getting conscious about the need of growing and investing more in MSMEs by breaking certain barriers like financial access, like we've done in this country. You see the Hustler Fund, which will also, along the that conference on the sideline, we'll also be discussing about launching our second product, which is group loan that will be targeting entrepreneurs who wants to aggregate into a group to increase their score and bargaining power to access higher limits, even up to 1 million. But also we're also looking at the market connectivity, and to me the most important thing is the market opportunity, because our people can access financing, but if there is no commensurate market, it becomes a challenge. So now that you're also pulling the market together with financing, so that we start now promoting opportunity-driven entrepreneurship. So there are massive opportunity, one, from the renewed focus, two, from various interventions that governments are putting in place. And as in Kenya, as you can see, we've had Hustler Fund, but above that, you're also re-engineering other, financial institutions that have existed within the government to make sure that they can increase that financial access. We also aligning the private sector, the private financial institution, and today you can see many banks telling us how now they have increased, or they've come up with the unsecured loan product. That shows that everybody is becoming unconscious. Secondly, one of the things that I think MSME can benefit from this ongoing conversation and various deliberate efforts that governments across the continent are putting in place is the regional integration and the market. For us in East Africa, we're staring at a market of 300 million people, which is massive. And that one, if you also look at the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, that also offers us an opportunity. And the fact that we can converge in Nairobi, how people across the continent talk about the opportunities which are in their country, is one step of assuring MSMEs that doors are open. So for me in this sector is to see how to stimulate the population at the grassroots, enterprise them, mobilize and organize them in formidable entities which they can access financing, also access capacity, the right capacity building skills and knowledge, be digitalized, and be able to produce competitive products that can put them to continental stage and also global stage. In other words, as Africa, we see an opportunity for us to level with in the global stage when we transform our traditional value chains to global value chain, and such conferences are the ones that showcase the world that this is the strength and the input of the continent. Kenya for a long time has always been the hub, the international hub. But as I've said, this has come a time now where we are now also capitalizing on that international hub that we've had. You see, for many years we've hosted the UNEP here, UNDP here, UNEP especially UN, UNEP, UN Habitat, and many other international organizations. But again, how we are just geopolitically positioned in itself makes us, also become that center of trade in Africa. So, like I said, we are not just a gateway to the rest of Africa, but also we are a gateway to the markets, both raw material, the emerging market for raw materials, and also for finished or processed products. So I think Kenya is very central. But again, also is the acceptability and the penetration of technology. Look at the various milestones that we made in mobile money technology makes the world appreciate that if it can happen in Kenya, that is any mobile money innovations, it can happen anywhere in the world. So I think it's in great appreciation of that people feel let's come and advance this conversation. But also I want also to think is because of the leadership that we have right now that has placed a lot of focus, a lot of effort on MSME. You will realize that this is the first time since independence that we are having a State Department that is focused on MSME growth. And it's just in appreciation of the contribution that this sector does to our economy. Right now, in terms of GDP, you can put it at 20%, but I believe that we have opportunity to even increase it to 80%. And that's why the president keeps on focusing on intervention that can stimulate economic growth or participation of people at the economic pyramid. So I think the environment is very conducive, and it has never been conducive like it is today because of the political goodwill that we are now enjoying in this space, and also because we are able now through this State Department and our ministry to create a coordination platform where all actors, private sectors, government agencies, development partners can meet, read and act from the same script.
Unique blend of natural herbs and is scientifically proven to strengthen teeth and keep gums healthy. Try Colgate Herbal, scientifically proven for strong teeth and healthy gums.
Sundowner Sunset Date goes county, this time to the land of opportunities. All roads lead to Embu County. Sundowner will be hosted live from the iconic Isaac Walton Inn with their grand collabo. Catherine Donye and John Obongo Jr., the Wicked Weekend Man, and thereafter John Karani JK will keep you on your feet with hits from the 80s and 90s till late.
Good morning, Mr. Walker.
There will be country music performances by Carrie B, karaoke sessions with Kid Karaoke, and much more fun. No dull moment when Sundowner fans get together. Sundowner Sunset Date Embu County Edition, proudly brought to you by KBC English Service and the Kenya Tourism Board on 3rd June 2023 at the Isaac Walton Inn, starting at 2 p.m. Entry 500 shillings at the gate. Tembea Kenya, Tembea Embu.
Mimi wasina roho mbaya, Ramesh, lakini ukinilazimisha haya maji utayaogelea.
Yani mimi sifai kusafiri.
Disco haikuwa tosha. Maona sasa mtafute faragha ya hoteli, wende mwenyewe mkajivinjari vizuri.
The only woman that I want in my life is mine.
Hakuna penzi lililoko sawa. Watu wawili lazima watatatizana tu.
Session of today being day 2 of the Kenya International Investment Conference right here at Safari Park. Let's have a brief recap with none other than CEO Equity Group, that is James Mwangi, to give us a recap and answer the question, what role is financial stability in Africa going to play to ensure that we leapfrog to where we are as a continent?
Very good. Finance is to the business enterprises what blood is to the body. It's a catalyst. It allows the flow and growth and health of business. It is imperative that we improve access to finance in Africa so that to give everybody an opportunity to be an inclusive Africa where we leave nobody behind. Finance must be affordable. Finance must be readily available and accessible to all. And finance must be a catalyst and a number of dreams to come true. To be able to do this, we must really look at finance holistically and bring all sources of finance together. There is the family finances, there is the business finance, there is the bank finance, there are venture capitalists, there are philanthropists, so that it's blended finance that we provide in the African continent. However, we must then ensure that finance gets a return. And so in Africa, we must really enhance productivity of business. The biggest challenge is of improving productivity gains so that the return to finance is adequate to give a profit to the owner of business and to be able to repay with the interest the loan that has been given. There are few sectors that can easily give us productivity gains. The first one is agriculture, but we need to modernize agriculture. We don't need to do agriculture how our parents, our grandparents, and our ancestors did agriculture. Agriculture has heavily been modernized, and that is the modernization that we need to adopt. We are lucky that the mean age of Africa is 18 years. So it's a younger generation, highly educated.
Sector where equities access to this credit, especially.
And in all these sessions, we have investment opportunities that are laying and waiting for investors from diverse walks of the globe and Africa. I want to speak about the infrastructural investment that we have in this country. As we are aware, tourism is a ministry that we are participating both government and private sector. And therefore, as we look at tourism as a sector in this government, we realize that the hotel management, the air travel is being managed by the private sector. However, the ministry has the agenda to develop the policy and the standards and the measure and the control bit. And therefore, as I talk about the investment opportunities, they run from the resort cities to water buses, in the sports, in the water area, in the water tourism. But allow me to go sequentially in terms of the sectors. I want to start with the infrastructure investment. And this run from the hotels. Kenya currently has less capacity, the beds capacity. If we are to attract the 5.5 million international tourists that we're focusing on, then we will need more hotels. Not only the Kenyan hotels or the local brands, but also attracting international brands. And already we are set as a nation, and I want to believe that the Minister of Trade has laid the background in the preparation of the country in terms of the regulations that we have. But we have an opportunity to invest in hotels, in chain hotels in this country. And not only in chain hotels, we also focusing in investing in Airbnb. These are apartments. As you look at our Kenya Kwanza plan, we're looking at attracting a percentage of 65% who are young people from the demographics that we have. The young traveler is going to constitute 65% of the tourists that we're going to receive in this country. And if we are to focus in the area of accommodation to attract this generation, we're talking about the camping sites, we're talking about Airbnb hotels, we're talking about going further to even the chain hotel, the international chain hotels. We're also talking about an investment in transport, because we're looking at a generation that has medium kind of opportunities and also kind of income. And therefore, this generation and this kind of tourists, we need to invest in not only vehicles, but also looking into PIV buses in this town, and also looking into a mode of transport that is going to have this generation move around. We are also looking at investing in our airstrips in some of the national parks, and therefore this is an investment that we can invest in. We're also looking at investing in eco-tourism sector. We're also looking at investing in aquariums in this country. And finally, I want also to talk about the medical tourism, which is a new niche in this country. Of late and recently, we have seen the Minister of Health the other day launched the Cyber Knife, and I looked at my performance report that I released in February. I realized that #2 source market that we have was Tanzania, and Uganda was following, and Rwanda was following. And we went deeper to analyze where were these tourists visiting this country. And we realized that they were visiting for medical tourism. The other area that we need, we have an opportunity is in MICE meetings and incentives. In Nairobi, we lack convention centers. And as a ministry, we have this opportunity. We have earmarked regionally in Nairobi, in Mombasa, in Western Kenya, in Northern Kenya, and in all our 8 circuits, we have opportunities to make an investment in convention centers in this country. Thank you. With those few remarks, I would love to stop there. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Madam CS, for setting the pace for this very vibrant session, which we'll now be delving into. We had intended to have a much larger panel, but due to the interest of time, we have reduced it to a smaller number. So without further ado, I'll call the panelists for this session to come up, that we may start. Mr. John Chirchir is the Acting Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Tourism Board. Give him a hand. We have Dr. Erastus Kanga, who's also the Acting Director General of the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS. We also have with us Mr. Norbert Talam, the Director General of the Tourism Regulatory Authority. We have with us Dr. Abdullahi Ali from the Society for Conservation Biology Kenya chapter. Mr. Pius Meto is the Director General Sports Kenya. As you know, Kenya is well known for the sports, men and women. We'll hear more about from him. And finally, we have Michael Pudo, who's the Chief Executive of the Kenya Cultural Center. So from this distinguished team, we shall give you each 5 minutes to give us your role, mandate, and what it is you'd like to tell these distinguished delegates about the opportunities in investment in your sphere of operation. Shall we start right at the far end with Norbert Talam from TRA?
Good morning, everyone. Or is it afternoon? Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Norbert Talam, Director General at Tourism Regulatory Authority. Tourism Regulatory Authority, we are the regulators of the tourism sector, and being the regulator of the tourism sector, basically we are the authority that license all the tour operators, the tour guides, all tourism facilities in the country. Secondly is that we also do, in liaison with Ministry of Education, we do regulate the curricula that is being taught across all tourism institutions that touches on tourism and hospitality. We do also on the other side of hotels, we do classification and aggregation. Classification basically is a star rating of all hotels and tourism facilities. We do accreditation for the small hotels that cannot be classified. That is our role. Other than that, we also ensure that we have a sustainable tourism activities across the Republic, which informs what an investor can actually invest in a manner that we are going to have a tourism sector that is sustainable, is for the future, and we can actually do a proper investment for the future. That's what I want to put across. We also do an annual tourism report, which informs how the tourism sector has performed. With this one, we are doing in conjunction with our sister parastatal called Tourism Research Institute. So, just to put across the point in terms of where investors can invest is that we are having quite a number of facilities that have been coming up in the country, but with the numbers that our Honorable CS has talked about, a target of 5 million, we have quite a number of investments that we need to make in the areas around hotels, around tended camps, and around the other facilities that plays a key role in the tourism sector. Over and above that, the aspect about classification, which we do in terms of giving star ratings to the hotels. That's an area that investors can also do investments, especially more so the foreign investors, because of the brands that we're having globally. We can also, or like an Trump, that we can invest in Kenya with those brands, with the numbers that we have, with the local or domestic tourism that we are pushing across. It is a matter of time, and we will, your investment, you will not go wrong. The small facilities or the small hotels, we do accreditation, and in the accreditation side, we give a mark of quality. So from an investment point of view, it's not a matter that you invest in billions. We encourage investments in billions, but if you have your millions, you can actually invest also on small facilities, which will give you a mark of quality, and that mark of quality will enable you to do the business. As per the Kenya government manifesto, we target the budget travel, which involves the youth, and that is an area that we'll do a lot of focus on. If you look at the population demographics, majority of our population, more than 50%, are the youthful. So that's an area that we're really focusing on, and is an area that investors will reap more in terms of return on investment on that area. The last but not least is an area of tourism education, which is setting up the tourism facilities that train the tourism and hospitality. We work very closely with the ministry under TVETA and the other regulatory bodies that regulate the education sector. Is an area that also we encourage the investors to invest in these colleges, in the institutions that train the tourism participants. It is a very big investment that is a big area of potential, I will say potential market that you can invest, and the return are quite high. So that's on a nutshell what we do as the Tourism Regulatory Authority, and we will wish all of you who are in this room, if you are not invested, please invest. If you have not toured Kenya, please tour Kenya. And you see those parliament of baboons in Suswa, as our CSR said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Talam. For any questions you have for him, just hold them. We'll come to that session. Our next presenter, Dr. Erastus Kanga, Acting Director General, Kenya Wildlife Service. Some of those beautiful images we are seeing behind them are actually in his jurisdiction. We'll get to hear more about that. Karibu, Dr. Kanga. If someone can give him a hand with that.
Can you hear me?
You're good.
I'm okay with this. Thank you, friend, and good afternoon, our guest. As I said earlier, my name is Erastus Kanga. I am the Acting Director General of the Kenya Wildlife Service. The mandate of the Kenya Wildlife Service is quite wide. We are the government agency that is in charge of all the national parks, 24 of them. We are also given the mandate of overseeing all the wildlife in the entire of this country. And by that extension, we are given oversight role over the national reserves that are under our county government. We are given oversight law over our community conservancies. And by that, what that implies is that we are the team that is in charge of the product. And we invite all the investors to come and use that product to do their investment. And cutting across the country, you realize that we have a unique assemblage of parks and reserves that we collaborate with our community members to ensure that the product is up and running, so that when we have over 75% of our tourists coming to this country, all of them are interested in the wildlife resource that we have. Learning around the investment opportunities that we have three kinds of opportunities for investment. One is accommodation across our protected areas. And in those areas, you can easily be able to put an eco-lounge, you can be able to put in a restaurant, you can be able to put in a shop. It all depends on the locality. Then the next investment that we can easily be able to do is adventure. You can be able to have zip lines, you have cable cars, you have facilities for team building. And over and above, we have two parks, that is Elementaita and Elsgate, where you can have very nice spas that you can invest. Then the third one is we have another product that we are calling public-private partnerships. We encourage people who would want to deal with the areas that are quite remote, in areas that are quite removed from towns. They can come and partner with us, and we do a lot of investment there. So basically, we have already developed a national park prospectus, and in that prospectus, we have 95 of our investment opportunities, and they span around from the premium parks. You go to the wilderness parks, you go to the urban parks, and you go to the special parks that are in very, very remote areas. And our hands and our arms are open to welcome all the investors to come and see what opportunities in details are within our national parks, national reserves, and community conservancies. And as I close, I would want to welcome all of you to take a break of an hour or two. It's a 7 kilometers drive into Nairobi National Park. You come and see some of the wonders of our world. And in Nairobi National Park, you'll find 4 of our 5 big 5 animals ready to welcome you to Kenya and Nairobi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kanga. So there you have it, 7 minutes to Nairobi National Park. Who can resist? Our next presenter is actually very supportive of the very first two. Norbert Alam regulates and does the standards. Dr. Kanga packages the product. Somebody has to market that. So welcome, John Chirchir, Acting Chief Executive, the Kenya Tourism Board.
Thank you very much. As you've heard, my name is John Chirchir, Acting CEO, Kenya Tourism Board. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, especially those who have come from outside Kenya. Welcome to magical Kenya. This is a destination that really embraces visitors, be it in business and pleasure, leisure, or other reasons. Feel welcome. And for Kenyans, take the call from my colleague, Tembea Kenya, Zuru the parks. These great things waiting for you and experiential. So, the mandate of Kenya Tourism Board is actually to develop, implement and coordinate a national tourism marketing strategy for Kenya. We coordinate because we cannot deliver on our own. We have to work with partners, for which Mr. Koigwa is one of them, and we really work collaboratively together with counties and where products resides, as well as the people who provide services in various areas and touch points where our visitors go. The second point actually is to promote Kenya both locally, nationally, regionally in Africa, and internationally, so that we have domestic travel thriving and also increase arrivals from international markets, for which we have to fight for our fair share. The third is actually to determine the needs and insights and trends and advise our private sector of the same, so that investors like yourselves and potential investors and those who are already in existence can expand the scope of tourism investment for us, ask Kenya to be competitive and to play our role at a higher level, given that tourism is a really important part of the national economy, right from Vision 2030, placing tourism as the first and subsequently triggering the growth in other sectors, because tourism, travel and hospitality, if you look at from the beginning of and end of each value chain, it touches a lot of things. If you look at restaurants, bars, travel by buses or aeroplane, you really touch multiplier elements of various sectors. So that catalytic role of tourism is really critical. And the last mandate is actually do anything that is to grow tourism into Kenya. So the current government has challenged tourism to really grow. One is on the aspect of arrivals, increasing arrivals numbers, like my colleagues have said. So that brings the question of capacity. How are we going to bring those people, those tourists? What are they coming to do? Where are they going to go? Who is going to feed them? Where are they going to sleep? How are they going to travel around by road and by air? So those are broadly, as the CS has mentioned earlier, those present great opportunities for investors. But the most important element is we've always catered for a high-end, so to speak, traveler who has come for a certain experience. But now we are saying there's another opportunity from regional markets, like the CS has said, Uganda and Tanzania being neighbors, and East Africa. How can we now improve their visitation into Kenya, and for what reasons? Number two is looking at the type of traveler, so that we speak to them, we speak to their desires really into their heart, and where they can be able to connect with our products. Currently, the Ministry of Tourism, working with the Council of Governors, are scoping to experiences around Kenya, to your backyard. So if you have an experience that is world-class, international, needs to be developed, we need to know about it. It needs to be mapped, it will be developed by investors, and then Kenya Tourism Board will come together with colleagues to come and to work with you to a point where we can be able to pick it up and market, because we want to have tourism felt across Kenya. So in terms of tourism investments, we are looking at having these Kenya-wide from various sectors that we have mentioned earlier. I'll pick out on a few. With increased arrivals, where will they go? So we are primarily nature-based destination in our strategy, beach, wildlife, culture, heritage. But we're looking for other niche areas that we can be able to move numbers and volume. Opportunity lies in maize because it happens in urban areas. Beach tourism is really great because you cannot destroy the product. Sand is there, water is there. It's how do we build it to work for the incoming tourists. And finally is looking at areas that do not have tourism visitation currently, but have opportunities. Look at your rural areas where you come from. From where I come from, there's actually a waterfall. There are mountains for hiking, there are forests. So these are the things, even you yourself know where they are. Once we map and develop this, the greatest opportunity that lies is rural areas. How can we bring them up on various aspects that really connect well? But broadly, we have, I may have to repeat some of the areas that have been mentioned. We have transportation, affordable, safe transportation across Kenya and into cities and into the coast, especially from the region. We have accommodation, which we cannot belabor, B&B, camping, affordable, quality, safe accommodation. We also have amusement park, because we're looking into families coming in big numbers from the region as well as from the international market. We have adventure activities that we are now known for globally, and we need to bring more up and take them up. Paragliding, diving, other courses using water sports and other facilities. Finally, the last is actually blue tourism. We have rivers, lakes, and the ocean that we can now collaborate with some of the colleagues who are going to present, how we can have boats, canoes, paddle boats, and many other things that we can be able to do in those areas, in regions in Kenya, as well as the greater coast, which is about 485 kilometers. Health and wellness, I'll not be labor because it has been covered. But the greatest opportunity is when people are actually traveling across Kenya. Road trips, connecting with the young people. Those who are Kenyans understand. We have the Subaru boys. We have those who are going into their motorcycles and getting out, adventurous, taking Instagrammable photos. So we need to create opportunities for them, working with counties, roads, Instagrammable opportunities and sites where people can stop, enjoy themselves, and tell their stories and the experiences that they have. So in my opinion, there are many more. I'll not touch on sports because I have a colleague who is going to cover it. But sports has put Kenya on the map strongly, and we are known for it. So even locally, we want sports fans to come and enjoy the same, practice and run with our champions, our global champions. It will be great to run with Paul Tergat, Eliud Kipchoge, and many others who reside in Kenya, and they are really iconic Kenyans that we celebrate. So with that, I will welcome all investors directly, yourselves, the partners that you have, and people you can reach to look at this sector in terms of tourism, because it offers a great opportunity to uplift the life of Kenyans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, for that very elaborate overview. We'll get an opportunity to question him very shortly. Let's change track, and now let's talk conservation. Dr. Abdullahi Ali, President, Society for Conservation Biology, Kenya chapter. Some of you may be hearing that for the first time. Let's get to know what they do and what investment opportunities we have. Karibu, Dr. Abdullahi.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Abdullahi Ali, and I'm from the Society of Conservation Biology, Kenya chapter. Society for Conservation Biology is a global professional network of biologists that are advancing the conservation of biological resources across the globe through professional development. I'm also the board secretary for Northeastern Wildlife Community Conservancy Association. I'm also a scientist working on the world rarest antelope in northeastern Kenya called the Hirola. It's four-eyed antelope. How many of you have ever seen the Hirola antelope? If you can show. Race. So Kenya is still undiscovered, as you can see. Also, I was one of the first people to highlight the presence of the white giraffe in Garissa. We documented it in southern Garissa, and now there are a couple of them in parts of Garissa. And that has also been a very unforeseen treasure in Kenya. So my conversation will dwell on opportunities around community conservancies in Kenya. Community conservancies, for those of you who are not familiar with, protected areas, sort of a community-based protected areas that are set aside by the communities and owned and managed by the communities that are taking care of wildlife outside formal government protected areas, that is reserves and parks. So these are conservancies have sprung in Kenya over the last 30 years or so. We have over 100 of them now spread across Kenya. And they represent the Kenyan communities. We have a very diverse culture in Kenya. So if you want to see the Kenyan cultures in Kenya, it's not in the parks where you can see them, it's in the conservancies. And conservancies, similar to national parks, offer a variety of opportunities, including the typical safari that you may get in parks. They offer eco lodges as well. They offer also crafts, ventures. All these communities make different things from natural resources that surround them. And the best place to experience some of this is within the community conservancies. Because of the wide geographical spread of the conservancies, in different parts of Kenya, they also offer a variety of landscapes where you can experience cultural homestays and feel actually how people live in different areas and how they use the resources locally and traditionally. Some of the emerging nature-based products like carbon or biodiversity credits, conservancies, because they're big and covering large swaths of land across Kenya, these are probably the best places to invest and work with communities to offset the impacts you are causing, or the impacts of climate change and other hazardous things we are causing to the environment. Of course, Kenya is one of the top 10 global biodiversity countries, so all the variety of animals that occur in Kenya and East Africa in particular, this is a place you can see them. And it's a way to empower our communities, both marginalized and areas. Of course, most of our wildlife are in rangelands, where communities are really poor and have coexisted with wildlife for a very long time. And now, because of the population pressure, there's a lot of human-wildlife conflict. And if we invest in some of these areas, we can ease some of those conflicts. And with that, I will welcome you to the conference.
Thank you very much. Quite some bit of new information there. You can interrogate that in a short while. We now move to an area that Kenya is quite famous for, sports. Mr. Pius Meto, Director General, Sports Kenya, tell us, what does this area hold for investors?
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much. My name is Pius Meto, Director General, Sports Kenya. I want to extend a word of welcome to people who have come from outside this country to this home of champions. Kenya is known as the home of champions in terms of sports, particularly athletics. So you are welcome to home of champions, and I'll be discussing briefly about that and the investments that are open to us in sports. Sports Kenya is responsible for coordinating sports programs, and in Kenya, we are also charged with the responsibility of developing sports facilities, working with the various stakeholders to ensure the development of sports. I will focus on sports development infrastructure because that's the area that we're looking at, and in general, the perspective of sports tourism. So as Ministry of Sports and Sports Kenya, we are looking at tourism investment in terms of infrastructure. Kenya, as I've said, is doing so well in athletics. However, we are lacking buy-in in infrastructure. And it's the area that is open for investment, and we are looking forward that at the end of this conference, we'll have people seeking to develop infrastructure, to support us in development of infrastructure in this country. As a country, we are doing well in athletics. And as a ministry, we are working towards ensuring that all the other sports picks up in this country. We want to bring football to where it is, because we know sports is what brings people together. It's what attracts tourism, and it also helps in terms of health. We, as a Ministry of Sports, we are also focusing based on the plan, Kenya Kwanza plan. We want to monetize talents. We want to ensure that all the talents are receive funding, so that everybody utilizes his talent for a gainful purpose. And to do that, we must have infrastructure that will support various sports in this country. Not only athletics, we are looking at basketball, we are looking at football, we are looking at lawn tennis, we are looking at all aspects of sports in this country. We have done so well in golf in terms of sports tourism. We have worked with tourism board, and we have attracted a number of tourists coming to this country to participate, and also to follow up on the golf that has been organized in this country. We have also attracted a number of tourism in terms of athletics. We've hosted World Under 20. We have hosted World Under 18 championships, which attracted over 100 countries in this country. So the reach of attracting tourism through sports is so huge, and the field is so huge for investment. We are currently we have developed a master plan which is giving room for the investors to join with us in building sports facilities. We are looking forward to developing a 70-seater stadium in Nairobi, mainly for ball games, football, rugby, and cricket, among other such sports. And we are looking for investors that we can invest together, because this is an area that is growing. There is a lot of potential and talent of football in this country, and we are looking at investing in the area of that infrastructure. We have also segmented our country based on potential talents. When you talk of athletics in this country, you talk of Kamarin, that's Elgeyo Marakwet, you talk of Uasin Gishu, you talk of Nandi, you talk of Kericho, and we have lined up sports cities to be developed in those areas, and we are seeking for investors to work with us to develop these sports cities in those areas. We are also focusing at having a sports city in Mombasa, which will support water sport, among other sports, and again, being a low altitude area, it will attract more participation of sports in the coastal region. So we are looking at investors who can work with us to invest in a sports city in Mombasa for sports, water sport, among other sports. So we are focusing at ensuring that all the sports types in this country get facilitated in terms of having the sports infrastructure. And we have lined up a number of areas that we want to put up, and we are seeking for partners that we can work together to ensure that we have this development. It is not only the infrastructure, we have the sportswear. Instead of us importing the sportswear, we are looking at also having investors who can work with us so that they can be able to manufacture the shoes, uniforms, and all the requirements of sports infrastructure facilities. Also, the equipment that are required for sports. We also are looking forward to having investors who can invest in our country, because it's a sporting nation. So it's our desire that in this forum we'll be able to attract a number of investors who will come forth to register to invest in sports industry in our country, so that we can together work in lifting sports in our country. Thank you so much.
Oh, give me a hand. Quite a lot of opportunities there. We shall get to interrogate them shortly. Our last speaker, last but not least, Mr. Michael Pundo. We now focus on culture. Chief Executive, Kenya Cultural Center. What do you have for us?
Thank you so much. As you've heard, my name is Michael Pundo, the CEO of the Kenya Cultural Center, incorporating the National Theatre. At Kenya Cultural Center, on a broader perspective, we have a mandate of promoting and developing the creative industries, and specifically in performing arts. And so we do this through provision for performances of drama, music, and dance, exhibition of creative arts, and also hosting, providing for hosting of discussions around literature and such aspects. But as part of the creative ecosystem, and more specifically as a government organization, there is a huge potential in the creative economy, and owing to the fact that Kenya itself is a more endowed creative destination, we have opportunity, great opportunity in investment in the creative industries. This government has taken a decision to put its energy in terms of developing the creative industries. And it's for the first time, the government has put enough resources to create and develop talent through the Talanta Hela initiative. And this is a talent sporting, talent nurturing, and talent development platform for all our creatives in performing arts, in visual arts, and even in other elements of arts such as culinary arts and even film production. Now, if you look at our cultural landscape, and more specifically in the creative industries, and take two sectors within the creative industries, and that is film and performance, you'll realize that in terms of infrastructure, there is great opportunity for investment. For example, in Kenya as a whole, we have less than 5 professional theater spaces which are public. Most of them are institutional. But even in those available professional theater spaces, the capacity is less than 500. And so we need to invest more in the performance and creative infrastructure so that we can, as we develop talent, we have then enough infrastructure to go with this development. In film, I'm informed that there are way less than 30 screens in this country. We all know that Kenya is a great film production destination. And that is because we have a very diverse cultural orientation. We have very beautiful sceneries. And so most people would come to this country to produce film. It is absurd that most of that film will have very limited space to exhibit. And so there is need to expand the infrastructure that support that sector in film. Talking about film, in this region, I'm told there's only one film lab, which is in the south. So most of the film producers in this region will either take their raw film to South Africa or to Dubai. And since we are saying we are a film destination, there is great opportunity in then developing or investing in the infrastructure. Kenyans are great consumers of cultural and creative industries, products. You realize that in this coming month alone, we have 2 major performances coming from outside and they are already sold out, that tells you the huge potential we have in terms of consumption of our creative industries. As such then, there is an opportunity in investing in promotional activities that promote our creative sector. Finally, as part of Talanta Hela, and because we are talking about monetizing talent, putting money in the pockets of our people, and as I said, this is a government initiative, we then need to partner with government, given the infrastructure, the capacity, opportunities we have in investment, so that we pull through this. As I finish, it is said that if you want to get something you've never had, then you must do something you've never done. And that is the spirit behind Talanta Hela. That money should be in the pockets of our creatives, and we must do what previous governments have never done by ensuring that our artists, our creatives are given the right opportunity and space to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those presenters. In the interest of time, we may not have much, unless there's anybody with a very burning question. The issues are quite clear from TRA, classification regulation, sustainability, KWS, we have managing the parks and over 95 investment opportunities. KTB, John Chirchir, marketing strategy, advising investors on trends and supporting marketing of niche products. Dr. Abdullahi Ali, community conservation projects with opportunities there as well, and various cultural homestays. Sports Kenya, a lot of investment opportunities to support the home of champions. We see a lot of physical infrastructure needed. And from Kenya Culture, again, a lot of investment opportunities, film, visual arts, performance infrastructure, and supporting the film industry. So unless there's a very burning question from the delegates, we have, yes. Can you support us for those burning questions that on anything they might have missed out?
Okay. Thank you for the time. My names are Lekshon Leuru Wilfred. I have a question to Dr. Abdullahi Ali. As a scientist, we are like trying to see on a way that we will protect the protected areas. So there's this thing here. We want to balance between agriculture and tourism. We have some protected areas like the swampy places. I am talking this way because where I come from, the hill springs of Transmara, Narok County, we have been now doing sugarcane plantation. At the same time, we are planting the sugar on the swampy areas. I remember in one of the places that I come from, we used to have the crown cranes in those swampy places, and by now, because of agriculture, we now don't have the crown cranes because of the interference with the agriculture. What are you going to do as the conservation manager, I can say, to see to it that we balance between agriculture and the protected areas? That's my question to doctor. Also, I had another question to National Museum, the director. Okay, how are you going to balance, or what are you doing to see to it that the youths are incorporated in schools to maintain or to upkeep the cultures? Because we go to school and we are doing away with our cultures, and these cultures are the attractive that are bringing the investors to our country. What are you going to do to see to it that youth are included and they are at par, that we are going to preserve our cultures? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I would like to recommend that, given the fact that the question coming out seems to be something that is more like internal, something that we can address internally, we have a side chat after this. Because in terms of investment, I think that's a question that might best be answered directly to the young man across there. I'm informed that due to the fact that we are running 2 sessions together, we may not have as much time as we thought we had. We would have to end this particular session to give way to the blue economy. So kindly give a round of applause to these distinguished presenters. And if you have any further questions, please channel them through the Secretariat. The coordinator for this session, Mohammed Abbas, you're here. And we'll be able to take any questions so we can drive this discussion further. I see a hand. Please guide. Yes, please.
Merci. Ma question en français. Je ne sais pas s'ils vont prendre des casques pour pouvoir comprendre le contenu. Je voulais savoir quel est le taux de consommation des populations de Kenyan au tourisme dans le pays. C'est-à-dire quoi? Le tourisme intérieur domestique. Quel est le nombre de Kenyans qui consomment ça? Je sais que la population c'est près de 58 millions. Quel est le taux de Kenyans qui consomment le tourisme? Merci. L'autre question, quelle est la contribution du tourisme kenyan à l'économie kenyane, c'est-à-dire au budget national? Ma troisième préoccupation, il y a parmi les invités des gens qui sont dans le pays pour la toute première fois. L'idéal et la meilleure manière de pouvoir investir au Kenya, de pouvoir maîtriser le tourisme, c'est de nous donner l'opportunité de faire un tour dans un seul site touristique peut-être et voir de façon pratique le contenu. L'année dernière, moi j'avais la chance d'être à Kisumu. Et après nos réunions, on nous a donné l'opportunité d'aller visiter. Donc je préfère même aller à Kisumu que de rester à Nairobi parce que c'est ce que je maîtrise.
That's interesting for me. Thank you very much.
Je tiens aussi à remercier le
I would like to also thank KIE that promised us to cancel the visa to come to Kenya, you have to fill 5 forms, 5 pages to have a visa. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kanga, would you like to help us with that answer? And we will not be able to take any more questions due to time. Dr. Kanga, did you get that question?
Come again?
Did you get that question?
Yes, the question was about the practicality of the investors being taken to sites like Kisumu. He says that the last time he was in Kisumu, he loved it and he saw it very well. Then the next item that he raised was about the application of visas to come to Kenya, that people have to fill 5 pages for them to have a visa, and I think that should be directed to our immigrations. And as a very hospitable country, we have taken those, especially the last question about our application of visas and the invitation of visitors here, very kindly, through our cabinet secretary, we are going to address it. Thank you.
Point well noted, and it shall be taken up. Thank you for that. A round of applause for these distinguished presenters as we dismiss them. Thank you so much.
You sound feel my soul, nothing better. Kenya unapendeza, uye una vile wanashinduka. Inanitosha Kenya, inanitosha, inanitosha, inanitosha Kenya, inanitosha Kenya, inanitosha.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are now going to join our next session. And this is all going to be around sustainable blue economy. And the sub-theme will be to promote economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental stability. Investment opportunities through Can Invest. With that, we're going to play a video just before I call up our very able moderator, Flora Lumki. Thank you.
From the mountains to the ocean shore, we see it, we hear it, it's Kenya's core.
My name is Frederick Nieser. I'm the CEO of Waterbus.
or Globology Limited. Autobus is a company that was founded in 2005 with a focus on providing safe and affordable transport for the people on Lake Victoria. We have transported 2.8 million passengers on 3 routes and are moving our service into Uganda later this year, where we plan
the cities to the fields of gold. We taste it, we feel it, it's Kenya's call.
To get Skizatune Hail Mary, dial *811 *963 #.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
To get Hail Mary, dial *811 *963 #, *811 *963 #.
Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi